Welcome back to the Boardshop podcast. I'm Nate. This is Kyle. And today we have a guest who has been just about everywhere. His name is Chris McBride. Chris, street luge professional, event organizer, former IDF board member.
Yep.
And we're just going to go through a bunch of fun stuff. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today.
No, awesome. Thank you for having me.
It's nice to have someone who not only has the know-how, but the experience of going to these events. So diving right in, what do you do?
In my normal life, I'm a computer programmer. I work for Google for about 3 years now, but I've been doing this for forever. It's what allowed me to travel the world and go everywhere, like you were saying.
Yeah, we're really not touching on the amount of travel the world that you've been to. How long have you been traveling for street luge?
I went to my first international event in 2001.
So we're at 20 years now.
Doing international events. So I started racing in 98. My first event was in 98.
Okay, I was in third grade. Good. Good. I rode a skateboard down a hill at that point.
There was one time when I had my butt board. Someone was saying, "Hey, you know, how long do you have it?" And one of the kids racing, you probably remember Swiss Army Knife, Quinn from
Quinn DeBow from
Quinn DeBow.
Canada.
So he was like 10 years old, and my board was 11.
Oh, and you were just kind of like,
Yeah.
and awkward.
Right.
That's it's nice to have a product that long. It's interesting when you're on the start line with someone who is younger than the product you're currently using.
Yeah.
Okay. So, how many continents have you been to?
I've raced on every continent I've raced on every continent except for Antarctica. So
Nailing it.
Yeah. There we go.
So, your first international race, where was it?
So I chose about as far as you can get from here. It's Cape Town.
South Africa.
In Cape Town, South Africa. And if you look on the globe from Seattle, straight through is like off the ocean, off the Indian Ocean in Cape Town. So I pretty much went around the world for my first international event.
It would have been faster. It would have been shorter to go straight through.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Okay. So Cape Town, was that a Hot Heels or was it way
This
before
was
Hot
before
Heels?
Hot Heels. This was Red Bull DHX. And this was like the event ever. It was one of the best events I've ever been to.
What made it the best event?
30,000 spectators.
That would do it for me.
Live TV. 30,000 spectators was key though. We were also treated like rock stars. So they flew us in there. We had drivers all week, and every night we would go to a bar and free drinks and free food, and just absolutely amazing. We haven't seen anything like it since then.
Okay. That's really, what's the second closest event that you can think to in more modern times that maybe someone who would be listening to this podcast?
So the event, so when I first started, I went to a bunch of big events, X Games, Gravity Games, a couple of Red Bull events, all huge.
As a participant?
As a participant.
Okay.
Since then, we had nothing. It was all grassroots for about 20 years. A couple years ago, now I miss this event, but a couple years ago, we had at the time, called the World Roller Games. Supposed to happen every 2 years, and for obvious reasons, haven't had it since. That was a big event, and that's probably the closest we've had to Red Bull DHX or X Games.
Is this roller games?
The World Roller,
and that was in Spain. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm very familiar with that. That was in my lifetime, a little bit more.
It was what, 18, 17? No, 19.
19. Yeah. Because I think that's when everyone, that's kind of when the shuffle started happening and people started getting, longboarders in particular, started getting their, for lack of a better word, they started getting their shit together so that they could represent their countries and do really well.
Right, because this was an invite-only event, and so you had to be invited basically by your country to represent your country, and so it was essentially the top 2 or 3 riders from every country. And it was a pretty large turnout, at least for luge. We had 60 people there, I think, 59 people or something.
That's pretty awesome.
Which, since in the last 20 years, that's probably our largest street luge event. Now, the stand-up event was a little bit smaller because it was limited to 3 people per country, but you still had some of the best people coming.
It was probably a great representation of the cream of the crop.
Exactly.
Was it the same? It had to have been the same in street luge as well. They're probably,
for the most part, yeah. There was a few people that were, if you were in the right country, but most of the people we got some of the best riders out there.
Who won? Was it Macau?
I'm not sure now. I think Ryan took second. The problem is that it was more of a push race. And
A
it's
little bit
short,
flatter,
yeah, it
a
was
little bit
flatter,
shorter.
a little bit shorter. And there was like one turn, and I don't remember who won now. I don't keep track of the.
Oh, okay,
wouldn't be
yeah, and
surprised if it was
unfortunately,
Geopolitical.
I think we've talked with Lee about this as well when it comes to luge. But a great luge track for him is like 6-7 minutes long, and you can really mix it up. But that's kind of unrealistic for a.
Yeah, as an organizer, I'm looking for tracks that are at least a mile long, and that gives you, anywhere from a minute to 2 minutes of racing. Anything longer, as an organizer, gets into logistical problems. As a racer, we have, Maryhill is 3 minutes, Kazakov is 3 minutes. We have some decent tracks.
Some decent tracks. So have you been to? What's the longest road that you've skated?
The longest road I had skated would be in Chamrus. So Chamrus was a free ride.
You got to explain that to people who have not. I'm gonna guess France.
It's in France.
Okay, yeah, what up? No big deal.
Above, well, it's near Grenoble, and it's way up.
I totally know where that is, but can you explain to where that is for Kyle?
Grenoble. It's in France. I can't really tell you where exactly in France it is, but
it's really close to France. If you've met
There you
that,
go.
okay.
Yeah.
So obviously,
So-
is this the Dolomites or
no, I think this is still in the Alps.
this is still in the Alps?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the road itself is we start at some ski resorts, and we go down, and the event itself was 10 kilometers, which is about 6 miles.
Mm-hmm.
And we had 6 hairpins. And the really cool thing about this is they had these signs, hairpin coming up, because the road's long enough. It was really hard to memorize. I mean, there's like 100 turns, 6 hairpin, but like 100 turns. Hard to memorize it. So they would let people know, hey, there's a hairpin coming up. And we did 6 or 7 runs a day because it took about 45 minutes to like drive back up the hill. It just,
Because it's mountain pass. It's always like, oh, it took 5 minutes to get down and
Right.
45 minutes to get back up.
So on my butt board, the first year I did it on my butt board, which was an ab killer. But it took 12 minutes to ride down. That was for the free ride. The second year I went, a bunch of us after the event was over, we rode down into town, which was about 20 miles, I think. And it took us, I don't know how long it took us, but it took us a while. And that was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. There's been a couple opportunities driving around the country where I've rode down a couple big roads, and it's always one of those like, are you kidding me? Like, we're going to be riding for how? Like,
Right.
not outside of Boise, Idaho, there's a road that's about 35, 40 minutes long if you're slow like me. And it, like 3 minutes in, you're like, oh, I've made a costly mistake. Like, foot braking is no longer possible. My legs are wobbling. On the street luge, like the abs,
It's
I'm
the abs.
sure. Yeah.
And at this particular event, at least the first year, I got to the bottom, and I was just like, ugh.
Like fall
And
off of
it
it.
just roll off the board. Yeah.
I've been okay. So France, that's the longest event that you've been to, but you kind of have this like unique perspective of being not only a attendee of a huge amount of events in a lot of different countries on a number of different continents, but you've also organized an event as well, the Maryhill Windwalk.
So before that, I helped organize a lot of events for
Okay.
a variety of people for a variety of reasons. Back in 2003, I broke my leg, and so I spent a couple times helping
Pogo stick accident or street luge related?
This is everything was street luge related.
Okay, back then.
This was I jumped a big air jump. No, this is a year after my big air jump, and I broke my leg. And so that year I helped out some people, and so I knew a lot about organizing. And an opportunity came up to put on a Maryhill event, and so I jumped on it. And to be honest, I was in over my head. It was we made a lot of mistakes, but the biggest one, we didn't have enough people to help run the event. But I ran Maryhill Windwalk in 2017.
Okay. And I mean, do you mind talking about like, it's obviously I was shocked about like running an event so hard.
It is hardest thing I ever did. And
Okay.
to be at the time I finished, I was like, this is the hardest, most stressful thing I've done in my life. I can't wait to do it again next year.
Okay.
So it's really hard and stressful. Very, I have 6 people lining up asking me questions, and so it was really stressful. We almost lost the event the day before the event because we didn't get our insurance. Insurance, first thing I tried to square away. It was the last thing I ended up getting. There's so many little things that could come up that happen. We didn't really have problems with hay, but the same year I got a call from Justin Rollo, who puts on Devil's Peak, and he's like, hey, I had to buy hay from like 6 states away. Would you like to, share in the cost? And I'm like, I just got off the phone with my hay guy. Otherwise I might have. But you just never know when a last minute thing is going to come up like that. And we had probably half of our volunteers show up that were supposed to show up. We had a fire. We didn't have a fire, but across the way, a huge Oregon forest fire went on. To be honest, I had no idea what was happening.
You were so event.
But we filmed the event, and after it was over, I was like, this film, it just doesn't look great. And I realized, it's because the sky's smoky. There's just smoke in the air.
Yep.
On the Monday, we were cleaning up after the event. There's just ash falling out of the sky. And we actually talked to the people who own the hill, and they said, don't leave and wait until the air clears up before you finish up the work. It was that bad. Okay.
Yeah, I've been there a couple times when it's smoky, and it's pretty miserable. So.
Yeah, and it was just the forest fires were. In fact, some people were worried about getting back to Portland. They were between Portland and Maryhill. So Maryhill is about an hour and a half outside of Portland, for the people who don't know. And there's a main freeway, and then there's like a state route on the other side of the river. And I believe the main freeway was closed because of the forest fires. So that's how close the fires actually were.
That would have been a bummer to organize an event and get forest fired. Yeah.
Now to continue with that bad the bad mojo there, a couple of years ago, the week after the Maryhill race, not mine, but somebody else's, I believe it was Thursday. The race ended on Sunday. On Thursday, it basically burned down, and that was devastating to everybody, because I know some people who lost their home that lived near there. But it was just, this is a sacred race for us, and we didn't lose the road itself, but to potentially lose that was really devastating.
Because how many years have you been going to Maryhill now?
So I'm one of the first people. A friend of mine actually discovered the road back in 2001. And
who's that?
This was Curtis Head.
Okay, yeah.
So he discovered the road.
The most flexible old guy I've ever met.
Yes, yeah.
He's not scared to do the splits. Every time he comes into the shop, he's like, check these splits out.
Don't ask him to do that. So
I do every time.
So I missed that run. So a couple of the guys in Street Luge, they went down there in 2000. I missed that run because I had a business trip to go on. But I went down with them when they introduced it to Biker and EDI. Mm-hmm. So they raced the EDI in 01 and 02, and I missed that event because I was going to Hot Heels in Austria, which was happening at the same time. Oh. Then a couple of years later, Timeship ran, but it was stand-up only. So I finally went down there and rode at the 07 IGSA Maryhill Festival of Speed, and I've raced in every event except for the one I put on, and then I missed the one that Dean put on the next year or 2 years later.
Mm-hmm. I totally understand. That seems like, okay, so you've been to more Maryhills than most.
I was talking to Zach Madem at the last event, and we think that I've probably been to more Maryhills than anybody except for maybe Dino. But Zach Madem has ridden that road more than I have, because he barely misses a run, and I miss about half of them. So,
yeah, I have missed one Maryhill in the last, I think, 11 years. One Maryhill free ride. I'm not much of a racer.
Yeah, so Zach's
been to all.
He's been to all the races. He got to the finals, I think, and everything. Mm-hmm. Been to all the free rides, and I think he even went to like the World War, which I didn't go to.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. This was the Canada versus America. Yeah,
that was the first free ride, basically. But I've been down there for like some of the newbie free rides, and now Gino he's sort of doing it the right way. It's everybody's welcome at all the free rides, and
yeah, it's I mean, dude, being an event organizer has got to be so tough. He's like trying to like be inclusive and be like, I want to have one for just the beginners, and then like people are upset, and at a certain point, you're just kind of like, if I just throw the event, people are going to be mad no matter what. I may as well just throw the event.
well, his idea is, and it worked out for a few years. He would run a spring free ride for basically, for anybody, but all the pros would go to it because the racing season hadn't started. Well, now the racing season gets underway in June and July, and so he ran this, what he called the newbie free ride, Cramps, Groms, and
the G ride. It's the The geezers, groms, and gals.
Right. And
I believe is how he phrased it.
And it was actually a good event because it was a little bit more mellow because half the pros weren't barging. But as things got people got better, a lot of the free riders got better over the years, and so it's just open everybody, and that's the way it should be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's for me, it's like I went to all of them. I went to the G rides as well, and it's like, hey, yeah, I just want to skate. Like,
right,
yeah, sure,
exactly.
I suck. Whatever. What do I need to say? Like, no, I'm bad. I'm real bad. So you've done all those, and so you've been traveling around hosting events. You have been to some of the biggest events. Have there been some events that you've gone to and just been like, what's going on here? I mean, I'm sure there's been.
Oh yeah. Probably the worst event I've ever been to was Kingsgate, which was an event 3 or 4 years back is a World Cup. And to be in their defense, what happened was they had a road, supposedly a good road, but the Alps in Switzerland, was this Switzerland? This might have been Austria. The Alps are snow covered for half the year, and in March or April, when the snows went away, they went and visited the road, and it was unrideable. Either I don't know exactly why. I don't know if it got washed out or what the problem was, but they didn't know about it until the springtime. So they scrambled to find a new road, and my understanding was this new road we went to was sort of a nice road, but no one had ever really ridden it before, and they put the event on. It wasn't well protected.
This is I remember it being like real pinball-y, like some of the initial corners being like real back to back, and
it was just it was one of the things where the road was steep, but it was so steep that the road itself isn't that steep because they have the hairpins in there, and so the grade was less than we kind of like, and you didn't really pick up a lot of speed between the hairpins, and some of the hairpins were really tight.
So you're really slowing down.
Yeah, especially for the stand-up. I don't remember. I think there was a couple where the stand-up guys were either kicking out or wobbling out. I can't remember what you call it.
Pumping.
Pumping out. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't the best road, but just the event itself as a whole was just like we didn't have water and it was hot. Almost every event they gave us T-shirts. This one didn't give us T-shirts, and on top of that, up until now, it was like the most expensive event I've been to, and so it was kind of. It was, and I wouldn't have gone to it if it wasn't a World Cup because I have to, at the time, I had a couple weeks of vacation a year and to really pick and choose where I went to. And that was a back-to-back World Cup with another event. So I was like, oh, one trip, I get 2 World Cups. So,
and that's how you have to do it. I mean, you've got a job and you have paid time off. So you actually have a little bit more of wherewithal to get to some of these events than a lot of people. And still for you got to, you're like, hey, if you could put these really close together and put like 2 or 3 of them in a row, that'd really help me.
Yeah, and especially when when we're traveling overseas, plane tickets are expensive, and
and your luge is definitely not the smallest thing to. That's not a carry-on.
No, it's not. It is not. I've carried on my butt board before, but the luge is. Luge is not.
That doesn't. Yeah. What is it? Classic luge has to be under 40 inches or something
it's
like.
Supposed to be under 4 feet, and mine's just under 4 feet.
Okay.
Technically, it's probably too big for a carry-on, but I have carried it on a few times.
You're a nice guy. You can just smile your way through a lot of situations.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got. So you've been. I'm trying to like capture the essence of you as far as like your racing. Have you won a lot of events?
No.
What?
I'm not that good. I do have a few trophies. Probably, I think one of the first events I've won was Teutonia. Just actually,
Okay. Wait, you won did you first, second, third, something like that?
So on butt board. So the first year I was the only butt boarder, so I won that. But the second year,
you got the medal, right?
Well, I got the medal, but I was the first person to go down that hill on a butt board.
Can you explain Teutonia? Because I know a little bit about it, but can you explain? It's kind of a mild road, right?
Yeah. So I think this is Kevin Reimer's quote. I think this is Kevin's quote, which is they found a cliff and put tarmac on it. It was basically you come down into
it's like the fastest road of your life, and then it gets steeper.
Yes, so it comes down into a hard left turn, and you're hitting about 60 or 65 miles an hour into this turn. I never managed to do it without braking. Supposedly you could do it without braking, but I never pulled that off. But after that, it just drops off. So
you're going 60 into a left, and it's kind of a flat left. Like
it's a flat left, yeah.
So
you're like off camber a bit, and
then so you rip through this at 60, and then steeper.
It just drops away. I walked the hill, and my ankles hurt just standing on the hill, your feet hurt because it's so steep. The bus got stuck a couple times just going up the hill because it's so steep.
Would you rather crash going down or crash in the bus as it doesn't make it up going back down, right?
As long as it doesn't roll over, I think the bus is okay.
Okay. I've always been nervous about that when I've gone up some roads and I'm in the back of the U-Haul and I'm just like, God, this would be the worst crash of the entire event is if the U-Haul rolled.
We can actually talk about another hill about that in a minute, but
yes, we can.
So Teutonia is, it's in Brazil. It's a couple hours outside of Argentina. So it's at the tip of Brazil. And it's just this fast event. The hill itself, once you get around the corner, it's pretty straight, although there's a couple whoop-de-doos.
Little waterfall actions.
Yeah. So Dave Rogers, who's, definitely a legend in the sport, I think it was the year before I went, he almost got blown off his board because he hit these little bumps. His visor flew up and just the air pressure just yanked him back. I mean, we were hitting 85 miles an hour probably coming down this hill.
And the pavement's super smooth, right?
Yeah. Actually, the pavement isn't as bad as
it could be.
Think. It's not as bad as it could be. It got worse over the years, and I think now it's kind of unrideable. The biggest problem is if you ever see how they lay pavement, they do it in lanes. And this is a 2-lane road. So there's a seam down the middle of the road. And that's where the cracks were forming. And a friend of mine I had one person broke his hand, another person broke his ankle. But the crack at the finish line is wide enough to put your foot in. So what I would do when I was stopping, I always went down. There's a huge tree at the bottom. I waited until I got to the tree. This is like a quarter mile after the finish line. But some people, as soon as they get to the finish line, they're sitting up, and there's this crack right at the finish line. Like, what are you doing? Just keep going. It's a long, flat. You have plenty of time to slow down after the finish line. So, anyways, Teutonia, it was 80 plus miles an hour. I did it on a butt board, and at the time, I did about 75 miles an hour. So what we consider the unofficial world record until this other event I wanted to tell you about. So the first year I went, I got the gold medal. The second year I went, we actually had some competition, and again I got the gold medal.
Oh, okay, so you have 2 of them.
I got two gold medals from there, and I think I got the silver the next year that I went.
I mean, I would rather have a Teutonia medal than most things because it's a little bit of a testicle festival as far as like winning that race is like I stayed in my tuck. Obviously, I win. Like, oh, you didn't tuck the entire thing? Be like, yeah, I too was scared.
Well, just to give you an idea of how this works, the years that I raced, they start you at the halfway point. Our first practice run is halfway up the hill. Then our second practice run is about 3/4 of the way up the hill. And yeah, it's a good thing you do that.
Because it's just so fast.
Right. But
that makes me so sick to my stomach. I've definitely not skated hills like that before when you're just like, no, there's no reason.
So that's the fastest race I've been in. It's not the fastest hill I've ridden.
There's probably better hills to go faster.
There are, but there's not too many. I mean, one of the problems that we do, and this is what I say about the West Coast, is as America moved across the country, we got better with building roads, which is great for cars, but is worse for us. If you go on the East Coast or you go to Europe, there's lots of roads with hairpins and stuff. Out here in America, we have big, huge bank turns and
great for semi trucks and things like that.
It was the same as true for these. We need these steeper hills. You kind of want a straight hill and something kind of steep, really hard to find. Or they're really short. There's a couple. If you look up what's the steepest road in the world or whatever. And it's 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And it ends, like there's one in California that's like 30% grade, but it ends in like a brick wall.
Yeah. And it's like, and it's like, what, 1/4 of a mile long.
Right. If that long. So there's a road in Quebec. This is considered the most dangerous road in Canada. And the reason for it is...
Is this the one out of the escarpments?
Yes. Yes. So it's like a 10% grade into like an 18% grade. Into a 90-degree turn at the bottom.
Yeah, with a really cool guardrail divider.
Yeah, well, so what they do is, in Canada, they drive on the same side of the road as we do. If you're on the right-hand side of the road going down the hill, and your brakes get away from you, they don't want you to running head on into a car coming up. So at the bottom, there's these Jersey barriers through this turn. But what happened was a few years ago, I don't know when this in the 70s or 80s, a bus full of kids went off, and that's why it's considered the most dangerous road in Canada. But it's fast, and we've had a couple events there to set the world record, and these were time trials only, so it's not a race, just time trials, solo runs. Although we practiced with multiple people. The year I went, my goal was to hit 100 miles an hour or break the world record.
What was the world record at the time?
So the world record at the time was 157.41 kilometers an hour, which is like just under 98 miles an hour.
Okay, that makes sense.
And I failed. I did 157.39 kilometers an hour. So not only
in miles per hour, it's like 99.
Yeah, no, it's like 98 miles an hour. But I missed the world record by like this much, and I was a few miles an hour short of
100.
100.
Quick question: what's it like going? Well, you didn't go 100, but what's it like going 98 miles an hour on a street luge?
So keep in mind, we're either on a piece of wood, or in our case, we're on the street luge, which is usually typically made out of metal, and we're literally inches from the road. The stand-up guys, you guys are crazy, but you're up a little bit higher. It's one of those things. Like I've always said, it's kind of indescribable what luging is like, or even what what a downhill is like. It's the same thing, but more intense.
I think like street luging, I feel way more comfortable, but going really fast on a street luge, the acceleration's so much faster. Like, for example, when I like butt board and I'm dinking around at Maryhill and I'm like with a pack of stand-up people, like just the moment you like put your head back, just that acceleration, and you're kind of closed off. Like you don't have that upward facing view to look around. So you're just like, it feels kind of like you're just looking up at a piece of paper, and your depth perception's a little wonky.
One of the things I've always told a lot of skaters who either try to street luge or thinking about it, my personal opinion is you have a huge advantage over us because you're used to, you have a better view as a stand-up guy. And then when you lay down and you run the same track, you kind of memorize some of that view. So you definitely have a better advantage.
Sidebar, when you're at Maryhill, like there's a lot of times where like you may be right behind someone, so you kind of don't know where you are on the road unless you know where you are on the road.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So same thing. You have to have a little bit more like spatial awareness on the street luge.
Absolutely. But I'm just saying that as a stand-up guy, you can see more of the road. Like you were saying, you have the peripheral view, you're just higher up, you just see more of the road. Back at Maryhill, when you're laying down, there are times when you can't see the road turn because you just don't have that depth perception, and you just have to know that, hey, the turn's coming up. Now
that would make me nervous.
What happens is with most of the organizers, they'll usually put hay in the corners, but sometimes they don't. And we're coming up on a corner, and I know the corner's coming up, but
what's your marker? You were talking about Teutonia. Hey, there's a tree on the side of the road that's where I do my thing. There's probably a lot of visual visual indicators.
So lately, especially now that I'm more out of shape than I used to be, I set up in the turn, so it's a little bit easier. I get more of that depth perception to make the turns a little bit easier. It's just when you're laying down, you just don't have that much depth perception. Can't see that far.
Okay. Yeah. And so back to top speed, right? Is that what it was called?
Ultimate descent, top challenge. I think it's ultimate descent, top challenge.
Okay.
So I ended up, I think, fourth that year that I went. So with two people broke 100 miles an hour.
Bastards.
Yeah. Although one of the guys, he ended up in the hospital.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
He did 104 miles an hour. McIntyre, he's the one who set the world record. And the problem is that, and this is, you talk about what's it like going 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, I'll give it to you. In my book, you went 100.
Yeah, thanks. So
we round up on this podcast.
There we go. Awesome. So you're coming down this hill, and you're looking at a brick wall. Well,
because
concrete wall.
The hill goes down and then it flattens out, and then you have that right hand corner. So
Essentially,
when you're going down, all you see is that Jersey barrier wall. Okay,
Correct.
I'm just trying to put myself in your shoes and thinking about how hard I'd crap my pants.
So actually, you back up a second. So there's a T intersection right before the turn. So the T intersection, we don't care about it, but before the T intersection, there's a small island in the road. And a small island actually forces you over to the right a little bit. Now, if you line it up perfectly, you can just go straight. But you don't have like a full lane anymore because of this island. You have like a 3/4 of a lane. And so we have this 3/4 of the lane we're trying to aim for. And
at 100 miles
at
an
100
hour.
miles an hour. And so
Okay.
you have like, 3 seconds or something. I don't know how long it takes. And then you see this concrete wall. You don't see anything else. There's this concrete wall. Now, what I was told, what a lot of people were doing, and then right before the concrete wall essentially is the time trap, which is the idea is to go through the time trap as fast as possible.
I see some problems coming.
So most people were actually sitting up in the time trap because with street luge, in order to slow down, you typically sit up and brake.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't do that. I waited until you could see the concrete wall on my left side. So I waited until I was into the turn before I even start slowing down. So you didn't have a whole lot of time. Now,
And when you put your shoes down at that point, they're smoking
yeah, essentially,
heavily.
yes.
Is that pretty cool?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Some of the best photos I've got are just the smoke just pouring off of our wheels or no, our shoes. I should
Yeah,
say.
that's definitely, you like save that and you're like, that'll go straight to Facebook.
Right, exactly.
Thank you, photographer. Those are some of the coolest ones. Like drifting looks cool, but like some people don't get it. When you see someone with their feet on the ground and smoke coming off of it, like I think everyone gets what's going on there.
Right, right.
Oh,
Yeah, just to let people know, we slow down or we stop Flintstone style,
yeah.
which is we use our feet. The stand-up guys, some will use the foot brake, but a lot of guys lately they throw the board into a slide and use the wheels to slow down.
Well, it's
We can't
because
really do that.
downhill skaters don't have shoe sponsorships. They have
don't
wheel
have shoe-
sponsorships.
Yeah, we don't
the
have
moment Nike gets in this game, you'll see a lot of foot braking really fast. You'll see Jordans on the ground being foot braked.
The thing is that especially nowadays that top mount is much more popular.
Mm-hmm.
You're 5-6 inches off the ground almost, and you have to lower your body that far to brake.
Yeah.
With luge, yes, our feet are several inches off the ground, but we just have to lower the feet. Like it doesn't really take much time, and
It's quick and it's the preferred method of stopping, and it's super effective because like
Right.
on a street luge you can still foot brake and turn really well. Whereas
Exactly.
like stand up, that's like your worst enemy. Is like that's why
Right.
there's sliding, because turning hard and going through a corner foot braking stand up is like the worst case scenario.
right. The other thing too is in stand up, you're basically standing on one foot now because your other foot's braking.
Brake, drag, like literally catching on the ground, trying to rip you off the board.
Whereas when we're braking, like we're holding onto the board, our butt's still on the board. We still have control over the board, and so it's much easier to do. The other difference, though, is when you're standing on the board, your center of gravity is so much higher. You have a ton of leverage on the board, and you can toss it. When you're laying on the board, you have almost zero leverage. Now, there's a few guys who are learning to throw a slide in, but the amount of work that's involved is just, I don't think it's worth it. I think it looks cool.
It looks cool. Yeah, it looks cool. But like,
And it can be fun.
And people, I mean, some of it is like running looser trucks
Right.
to make it easier. But yeah, the leverage point, you don't have as much leverage when you're
Correct.
sitting on the board.
Right.
And so people started using narrower hangers. I think that was like the McKell trick for a while. It's not a trick. It was a totally legal thing. You just use really skinny hangers.
Right. Yep.
And so that was a pretty big advantage. Did you migrate that way?
So I've always been a big guy, and
Same.
So in just a few other things, so some more background. Typically with street luge, we typically run 6 wheels, and for a variety of reasons, but it gives us a little bit more traction. And a butt board is basically just a skateboard. In fact, that's kind of the classic style. It came from a skateboard. So there you have to run 4 wheels. Well, I went to one event, and basically every time down the hill, I basically coned 1 wheel. And
In the front, right?
in this particular one, it was like the front left. It was always, and so what I did is I didn't have any extra wheels for the butt board class. I usually bring extra wheels for my luge, but not butt board. So I was rotating that wheel, the wheels all around. So I had a fresh wheel on that corner. And I talked to a friend of mine who's a NASCAR professional race car driver, and he recommended I go with a wider truck. So at the time, I was running 180s on my butt board and 205s on my luge. So I went to a luge truck on my butt board.
Comp 205s, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. Yes.
I had a set of those for stand-up. The hardest truck to change your wheels on.
Yes, because it's a floating axle, so you have to. So, anyways, I went to the luge truck on my butt board, and I never coned the wheel since then. And so, the wider wheel, the wider stance, it gives you, it makes you a little bit more stable, but it allowed me to spread the weight out a little bit more, so I wasn't coning the wheel. So I've just stuck with the wide stance ever since then. I switched trucks because I got, like you said, I got tired of changing the wheels. So
you have to have your literally 7 tools to change it out. It's
on the butt board. The next race after I switched to this truck again, I had to switch trucks out or switch wheels out in a hurry because of an accident. And I jump on the truck, and I'm trying to do it going up the hill because I'm in the finals. I get my wheel, and it's not doing anything. And I'm like, oh, that's right. These are the floating axles, and
you need 3. You need the other tool. Been there.
So anyway, since then I've switched all to CNC trucks. And
what do you ride now?
I'm running Ronin trucks. They're a decent truck, but at the time they were one of the largest or widest
precision truck you could get.
Today, I haven't been following the trucks that much. I don't even know if you can get trucks this wide anymore because everybody's going narrower.
Yeah, that's just a problem money can fix. I know a number of guys that would not take your money.
So one thing I'll say about CNC trucks, I went to CNC trucks because they're basically the only way to get a wide truck. Cast trucks are really hard to make wide. That's the reason I went to CNC trucks. CNC trucks they're nice, but they're not a requirement.
No, you do not need a CNC truck to go down a hill. But unfortunately, I mean, in stand up, you'd be convinced that you do need a CNC truck to be competitive. But really, it just comes down to like those guys are just trying really, really hard. Right. They're doing everything they can. They're taking ice baths, and that's where I draw the line. The moment that if you're not staying up till 4 a.m. at the campsite, did you really win the race if you didn't win the party? Sorry, Danger Bay. So you've got this. I'm trying to make a super good podcasty transition into. You ended up being a member of the IDF board. How did that happen?
So, I'm getting older. I've been racing.
I'm 32 today. Can you tell? Is it shiny up here?
Shiny enough?
You got a nice head of hair. It's whatever. It's cool.
So, I started racing when I was 28. And
how old are you now?
53, 52, 52. I think. I don't know. I don't keep track anymore. But
I thought you were in your 40s.
Yeah, thanks. But
it's the hair. It's having hair. It really, it's a complete distractor for me.
So that's one reason. It's. I still want to race. I could technically be competitive if I put some more time into the gym. Yeah. But it's just more like it's getting harder. For a while I had less vacation time, so it was easy. I wanted to stay in the sport, and the easiest way to do that was to put it on an event.
Same thing.
A skate shop.
Same thing. Yeah, it's like, oh man, I see a lot more of my friends now that I own a skate shop because they all have to come to the thing I'm doing. Same thing with the event. You throw an event, people are talking to you year round. You're part of the scene. Everything's kind of like.
So John Osmond put on Maryhill for 9 years. Mm-hmm. That was one reason he did it. So he street luged. His brother did more of the street luging, but he street luged when he was younger. He still wanted to stay in it, and his brother talked him into putting the event on, and he loved it. It was like his personal private party that everyone came to his house to once a year. And so I kind of wanted to do the same thing, but at the same time, I want to see the sport grow. I'd love to see it get into the Olympics. I want to see it get bigger. I want to see Red Bull DHX type events again.
You want 30,000 people on the course,
Absolutely.
COVID permitting.
Absolutely. And, which, by the way, Teutonia, we had probably
Brazil comes out
5,000 or 10,000. And the amazing thing about Teutonia is you don't even know they're there because they're in the jungle until the event's over, and all of a sudden they're coming out. And where were all these people?
Because the road's through the jungle,
literally through the jungle.
Okay.
Yes. So anyways,
it's not like downtown Seattle where there's a sidewalk.
No, right.
No. Okay.
So we did do an event in downtown San Francisco. This was the X Games, and we had 10,000 people. People were 10 or 15 people deep on the sidewalk.
Oh God, that's the dream.
Yeah, exactly. So and honestly, I think that the sport is interesting enough that people could make a living doing it. We could literally have professionals. Maybe people like.
It's so entertaining to watch. The
Yes.
racing aspect in
So-
particular. I don't know if you've ever heard this, but like the nice thing about racing is like you can put it in the Olympics and it's not like, oh, well, this person didn't point their toes. It's like that guy crossed the line first, winner.
Right, exactly. So there's a couple of different things. So stand-up is interesting. It's very expressive.
Very expressive.
Yeah, you
The way that you move down the hill.
move down the hill. You've got, you go into a corner, and a lot of people ride the same way nowadays. But you've been to events where you got 4 or 6 guys going to the corner. They all look different.
That's an understatement.
Street luge, on the other hand,
Very uniform.
we're much more uniform. But
It'd be different if someone was like backwards on it, and you'd be like,
Yeah,
"Whoa, this guy's
right.
got some serious style."
so, but the thing is, and skateboarding. The other thing about skateboarding, everybody knows what a skateboard is. Street luge it's exotic. It's unique. People don't know what it is.
It's fetishized.
Yeah. And
What do you
in,
do? What's that thing? And you're like, "Well, what
Right.
98 miles an hour on it?"
Right. And so, but I think both of them definitely have their upsides as a downhill sport.
I think street luge almost more so than downhill in its accessibility, in the sense that you do not have to be. I think the physical requirements to be great at street luge are less.
Yes,
And the
it's
consequences
easier
are
to
lower.
Start, which is
Yeah.
unfortunate. It's a problem because anybody can lay on a board and go down a hill.
But
You
that's
may not
good.
be able to turn. Well, it is good, but it's also bad. Most people get hurt in their first year. I got hurt my first year because you don't know how to ride. But it's easy to sit on a board and go down the hill. A skateboard, on the other hand, not everybody can stand on a board. Like even on a flat surface, it takes a little bit it's a little bit of bravery and a little bit of skill just to get on a board before you even start going down the hill. And so there's this level of fear, I think, a little bit higher in skateboarding, which is good, and a little bit less in street luge. But
Interesting, because I've always thought about it like street luge is great because, and I didn't think about the not being able to turn. People riding like a skateboard or a classic luge or a skateboard down a hill and just like hitting something because they didn't know how to turn. They were sitting too far back,
Right.
what the case may be. But you're right. You can just sit on a board. Everyone should know how to sit, and the board will do most of the work. Whereas, like with a skateboard, if you can't stand on it, you're never going to get to the hill.
And the thing about street luge, in both cases, you can get out of your element very quickly. It doesn't take much.
That's been a recurring theme on this podcast: is that gravity is not biased.
Right,
It is.
exactly.
It'll hurt you regardless.
And that's the issue. Is when we first started, we were trying to help other people come in, and at one of the races, they teamed the pros up with the amateurs, and this one guy said, "Hey, if you're going too fast, slow down." He goes, "Well, how do I know I'm going too fast?"
That's I've never thought about that question before.
And my thought was like, well, if you've never been that fast before, then you're going too fast. But he didn't know, and I didn't really know how to explain to him. And sure enough, he hit the mailbox, and
Ow.
so yeah, he didn't tell anybody at the time, but I think he ended up breaking a rib or two, and at that event. But
And later on, his Facebook post was, "I think I figured out I was going too fast." Yeah.
no, but yeah,
Like,
but that's the issue, is that you can sit on the board, and before you know it, you're going too fast. I mean, it's not like driving a car. If you're going too fast, you let go of the gas pedal, right? Here, the gas pedal is the earth.
you can't let off the
The
earth.
only thing you could do is get off the board.
Okay. So, yeah. Oh, sorry. I'm thinking about hitting the mailbox. I did that a long time ago, and it counted. So, IDF. It was the easiest way to stay a part of it with less.
Right. So let me back up a bit. So, about 4 years. So IDF has.
I guess even before IDF, there's probably what was before IDF.
So IGSA. So
And before
IGSA. Well, before IGSA was Rail, and before Rail was Figure. I think they were probably one of the first ones.
And then when's EDI?
So EDI started about the same time as IGSA. IGSA basically, their first event was in '97, and EDI was in '96. And EDI basically folded when the Gravity Games folded. IGSA ran the X Game races for 5 or 6, 7 years. But when X Games basically folded, IGSA turned into the point series that we know today. And they ran for 10 years after that.
And what was the downfall of the IGSA?
There was a couple things. The biggest issue was Marcus Riedemann ran IGSA. Marcus Riedemann and Bob Osmond, they basically ran it as their business. And some of the skaters didn't like it. They didn't like the fact that Marcus was making money off of it, which to me, it never made any sense. But
To be mad that he made money or that he made money off of it?
that he made money off of it. That he's like, oh, you're making money off of the racers. Except Marcus put a lot of effort into it. So,
Yeah, you've held an event. Can you tell me what it's like to make money off of a skateboarding event? You're like,
not yet.
You're like, I lost 35 pounds and I had
Right.
to have a blood transfusion. Like, it was stressful.
But, so Marcus had a decent job that allowed him to take time off, but he still had bills to pay.
Mm-hmm.
And so he used some of the money to pay his bills while he was putting the 6 months of effort into. Just to give you a better example. So IDF ran with 7 board members, and that's not enough people to run IDF. Marcus ran IGSA basically by himself. And it's interesting.
Yeah.
Because the last year I talked to him about it before IGSA folded, he told me, I feel like I'm doing the work of 6 people. And this was before IDF formed and decided they wanted 7 people. So that just tells you like how much work he did. But he was writing articles for magazines. We had a Concrete Wave had articles that he was writing. He put out the last few years. He put out these media guides, which everybody wanted to get into. He built up this brand. The last year he ran the World Championship up in Calgary and got footage on
Windsport?
It was Windsport, the second year of Windsport, and he got footage on ESPN. It was I think
The dream.
I think James won and was on ESPN.
Mm-hmm.
Only for a minute, but still, like that was what we wanted. It was what we were aiming to get back to. And Marcus
Is that Red Bull DHX South Africa Cape Town event, like where you're
Basically.
on TV and people are showing? Yeah.
Yeah. We weren't quite there, but it was pretty close. Like just to get on ESPN, I think was amazing. And, Marcus drove us there. And Marcus did a lot of things. He basically put the sport on the map, essentially. He put a lot of effort into it. But he ended up with some medical issues. And at the same time, some other people were unhappy. And especially this Windsport, the same exact Windsport that we're talking about. Some things happened. I don't really want to get into. I mean, we can get into it if you want, but it's a long story. Some people were unhappy, and they decided to start a new quote-unquote Democratic Federation. Not really democratic, but so that's what happened. And they came in and basically took over.
Could you summarize it? Or is it like,
Yeah, sort of. I mean, basically what happened is about about a third of the organizers weren't happy. They felt they were paying too much.
A third of the attendees for the event or the organizers of the event?
I'm sorry. Talk about what happened in Windsport?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the biggest thing that happened in Windsport was I just did it for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And the first year, so Windsport takes place at Calgary, the Olympic Park in Calgary, and they're trying to make money during the summer. And so one of the big things they do during the summer is they have mountain bike sessions, and they have some zip lines and some other stuff. But like all ski resorts, they're trying to make money in the summer. And so one of the employees decided that he was going to try to turn the access track to the ice luge into a downhill park, basically. And his goal was to make this into, you can pay, $100 a year or whatever and go ride it all summer. I don't know what the price was going to be, but
sounds pretty good. Very similar to like the Whistler event that went down.
Yeah, sort of. But he wanted to turn this into a downhill park in the summer. So the first year we had a lot of support from the company that owns the Olympic Park. I don't know what happened, but the person got fired. But IGSA had a contract for year 2. So the new guys, the owner didn't really want this, and we no longer had somebody in the company supporting it. So there was issues. There was some headbutting there. We didn't get all the resources we needed. And then some other stuff happened. I don't remember everything that happened, but a few other things happened, and so things were late. We had 2 really bad accidents. We had a woman stand up, took us like an hour and a half, and then there was a street luge accident, also took like an hour and a half on race day. So everything was late. And what ended up happening, and on top of the worst thing that happened, and this was one of the few mistakes that IGSA actually made. We only had one person running the start line, which in a World Cup event is not enough. When you have 200 skaters,
you need more. You need more than one person to herd that cat.
At least two people. We had one person. So all the street losers, like we all lined up and we got ready. Well, the stand-up guys, they took over. And they claim that they threw a revolt, but really all they did was help line themselves up.
They just got the event going a little bit more smoothly,
right? And honestly, like I said, we should have had another person up there. But part of that just has to do with what happened with Windsport, and they didn't give us enough bodies and so on. So, anyways, that was the big revolt that happened, but because things were late, street losers got blamed, and it wasn't street losers' fault. It was just things got ran along.
Things get pushed when things get pushed,
right? And so there's a lot of people that were upset. I shouldn't say a lot. There was a few people that were upset, and there was already this. For years, people were upset at just Marcus in general, and here's the thing. I don't care how good the organization is. People are upset with it.
Yeah, that's when you know you've made it, is when people start complaining. You're like, oh, thank goodness, I finally made it as a successful event. People are hating on it.
So, but what happened, that just all came to a head at this time, and so another group of people decided to create IDF. And that's kind of where we're at today. But that group of people, it was about a third of the organizers. And there was some deceit that went on, and before you know it, IGSA they just took over all the events, basically.
IDF took over the IGSA events.
Basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to state it clearly because other people may listen to this. It'd be nice.
So it was basically, like I said, about a third. Well, almost all of the IDF board members the first year were organizers. And so they took
events.
Events.
Okay.
So they brought all their events. And then there was some deceit that went on. It was sort of they told me and he told me and she told me, and none of that happened. But who are you going to believe? And they ended up giving all the other events. And IGSA had no events. IDF had all the events.
And that's what you need to be a race organization.
Yeah, essentially. But the other issue was IDF came along and said, hey, we're democratic. But really, all you did was vote for the IDF board. And we can kind of see some of that going on right now. And the IDF board had all the power. And the members had no power other than to vote for
the people that they want to have the power.
So anyways, that's what IDF.
And when did that happen? When was that transition?
In 2013, I think, was the first year for IDF, I think.
Okay.
So that happened in 2012, at the end of the year. Now, at the time, I was spending a lot of time with Marcus. Marcus was my travel buddy for most of the races that I went to.
Yeah, you want to have someone who's been to all the events before you travel with Chris.
Yeah. We traveled together in Europe. I helped him out a lot. I was working on a new website or some new software for him with IGSA. And then IDF came in and took it over. So, at a personal level, I was a bit jaded with IDF. But I wanted to keep racing. And in order to keep racing, you had to race at IDF events. Now, I know some of the other street losers. Oh, and also on top of this, there were no street losers on the board. Well, there was one. There was one street loser on the board, but they were all skaters. Azra had a huge impact in creating IDF, and they were sort of anti-street luge. And so the first few years, there was a bunch of animosity going on. I was like, I don't care. I want to race.
You're like, yeah, I don't care. You close down a road, I'm here.
Right.
Like that's kind of your MO. Be like, the road's closed, Chris shows up.
Essentially, yeah. So fast forward a few years, and IDF, again, this democratic portion is they wanted to have elections every 2 years. And so I think it was in 16, or maybe it was in 17, at the beginning of 17, I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll run for the election. Some of the people I wasn't happy with were no longer associated with IDF, and it was still around, so it was a way to stay involved.
I mean, it's the hardest thing. I'm a mild vocal. I'm a pretty vocal critic of the current IDF GGA thing, but it's way easier to do that than it is to actually shut up and be a part of something and try and make it awesome.
Right.
Like it's way harder to construct than it is to deconstruct.
Well, what happened was I was sitting there thinking, what can I do? Now, I had been sitting in my basement trying to write articles for street luge. I'm trying to push street luge. So I would write these huge articles, or not huge, but I'd write some articles about how races went off and things that I thought IDF should have been doing. But so 2007, I think it was 2017 came around. And I'm like, well, what do I do? Do I keep doing what I'm doing? Do I run for the board? And I'm trying to make this decision when I heard that the current organizers of Maryhill were going to stop doing it. And I'm like,
The Osmonds were going to stop doing.
Osmond had already stopped. Dean had run an event, but it was Dean ended up getting hurt, and the event, I don't want to say it was a failure, but it was people got burned out. It's probably the best explanation.
Let me tee this one off. Dean was running like 5 events at Maryhill and tried to then throw a race, and the race was substantially harder than the actual free ride. And then he also so happened to get hurt at that event, and it's just like, at that point, you're kind of like,
and like I said, I, from my opinion, I think people got burned out.
Yeah.
So, and again, there's no, I'm not trying to, no offense. Like, I get it. Like, it's a lot of work, and there's no money, right? There's, and so,
and it's in Maryhill in the desert in the hot sun, and hopefully ash isn't falling out of the sky.
Exactly. So, when I heard that he wasn't going to put it on, and again, Maryhill is
special.
It's special. It's been part of the family for almost 20 years at this point. I was like, look, I think I have a better, I think I can drive things better running one event than trying to be part of a committee. And with a committee, you have to convince organizers to do things. So I was like,
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. I threw a super small event, got no sponsors, did nothing. And the reason why is because I didn't care. I don't want anyone else telling me what to do. It's like, I can control this little thing, and this is my thing to control. And so you took Maryhill and you're like, this is my thing.
Right. And I thought that I had a chance to, in 2 or 3 years, I can make more of an impact with one event than I could as a board member. And on top of that, and I still think this is true today, IDF was a negative value proposition.
Explain that.
So this is the reason why I didn't make the Maryhill Windwalk part of IDF. So the reason it's a negative value proposition is, as an organizer, you have to pay a sanctioning fee.
This is what I wanted to get to. This is one of the things that I've been like vocal about. So
there's things are a little bit different now, but at the time there's 2 sanctioning fees. You had a World Cup and you had World Qualifiers, the WQSs. And the World Cup actually makes sense, a little bit more sense. And I don't remember exact price was, like $500 and $1,500. I don't remember the exact numbers. But with the World Qualifier, you basically got nothing. You would get listed in the calendar. You might get an article written about it, and that's about it. And you might get a write-up written about it at the end. That was it. So as a World Qualifier organizer, there's, like I said, from an organizer's point of view, it's sort of a negative value proposition.
The money's not worth it.
The money's not worth it. Now, as a World Cup, it gets a little bit closer because you typically also get 2 warm bodies to help run the race and a timing system.
And people want to show up to get those World Cup points, so you get more people.
I'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
So I can actually go out and rent a timing system or hire a company for about $500 a day. So the price as a World Cup qualifier, as World Cup it's sort of a wash, because I could pay $1,500 for 3 days, or I could pay this other company like $500 a day and get timing. So it's sort of a wash there from the timing point of view. Mm-hmm. So now the other issue is the riders. Here's one thing a lot of people don't know. About 2/3, and this has been true the entire time that IDF has existed, roughly 2/3 of the riders go to one event. And in about 95% of the riders...
2/3 of the people, so 66% of the people who attend...
66% of the at an event, 66% of the riders only go to that event.
Okay.
But also, if you look at the membership as a whole, 2/3 go to one event, and 95% go to 3 or fewer events. Now, that doesn't... Okay, well, whatever. What does that mean? Well, it means for 2/3 of the riders, they're paying an extra $30 to go to one event.
Don't... And there's... Okay, yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
And what does IDF give you as a rider? It gives you a rule book. Well, we have rule books floating around from other things, and it gives you a point system. Well, for those 3, the people who go to 3 events or fewer, the point system is meaningless.
Because you're not going to be a World Cup.
Well, no, it's like you're on the point system, and there's 1,500 guys, But if you only go to one event, you're going to be tied with like 8 other people who went to like 8 other races. And if you go to Maryhill, and let's say you're not that good, you go to Maryhill, you're going to be like 100th place. Where somebody else who's not very good and goes to a race in Brazil, he's going to be in like 15th place because there was only 16 guys there. So with only one event, like the point system just doesn't
translate that well.
Doesn't mean much. And now I know there's guys that love the point system. I mean, I loved it. It's one of the reasons I raced.
But you went to more than one event.
But I went to more than one event. But I heard a lot of kids who are like, they loved the B races and stuff because they had a chance to get on the points and so on. But the point I'm trying to make is our races, back in the day, Marcus was pushing for $50 to $75 a day for an entry fee. And up until this last year, that has basically stayed true. So for a 3-day event, you're looking at $150 to $200.
And that's been the case in all the events I've ever attended.
Up until this last year.
Yeah. They were the cheapest. Was that the most expensive event you've paid so far, or the cheapest event for the rest of your life? That was my joke.
In a certain way, yeah. But the thing is, for like 20 years, this $50 to $75 range held. Now it's a lot more. But that's not the point. The point is when it's a $150 event and you're paying an extra $30 for a membership fee, that's 20%. You're increasing your entry fee by 20%. For us, one of the cheapest events I went to was down in Mexico. It was a $45 entry fee. Now, if you're a Mexican, you've almost doubled the cost of your event if you only go to one event, because you have to be an IDF member. Now, what they did down there was they had a pro class and an amateur class. And the amateur class didn't get IDF points because they didn't pay the membership fee. So this is the problem, is that, and if you look at the IDF Maryhill compared to the IGSA Maryhill, the numbers were half. And part of the reason is a lot of people didn't want to pay.
The IDF attendance of a Maryhill race was half of an IGSA attended.
Correct.
And your proposition, is that the additional IDF
a huge amount was. And I know this because a lot of people said that. And this is true across the board. You look at other events around the world, and the IDF version was always smaller than
the IGSA version.
Yes, and if there was a case. If that was the case.
Was there a parallel between the IGSA in these other events? The IGSA events were typically less expensive because of the addition. The event was the same price, but now you have the IDFA membership fee.
Yeah, IGSA didn't have a membership fee, which is one thing we were working on instituting. But no, there's a couple famous instances where IGSA, the following year, there was a fallout for whatever reason. The following year, it was an independent event, be about half the riders. So IGSA actually brought more riders to event for the same reason you just mentioned a minute ago. People wanted the points. But nowadays, you only have about 20 skaters, stand-up guys, that chase the points. Maybe a few more than that. But you only have about 20 that go to enough to max out their points. With street luge, it's like 3.
So so if I was going to try and get a street luge 1, 2, 3, if I was going to get a 1, 2, 3 in the downhill arena, it's going to be in street luge.
Yes, but the top guys are really good and they go to all the events. It's still really hard to get.
So I can't pay to play to get that trophy.
Not exactly.
Moment. Okay.
I mean, you can, but
I still
you got to get really lucky.
Okay.
Yeah, you still have to be good. So it's not like that. It's so the good guys are getting the trophies, like
which is how it should be.
Colby Parks, Andy Lally, Mikkel's never won because I think Mikkel won one year, but he doesn't travel.
And he's really, just to straighten that out, Mikkel's really fast.
Mikkel is really good,
but he just doesn't go to all the events.
He doesn't go. Yeah.
Okay.
Vacation time, he doesn't have time to travel, and right when the competition picked up, he got promoted at work and had less travel time. But he tends to win. He's only lost a few times. But like one of the people he lost to was Abdul. Abdul has won the world. Has won the series. So the guys who win the series in street luge are good. Like nobody is.
So even if I had the money and the time off and the extra large bag to get my street luge there, I'd probably still get smoked.
Yes.
Okay, good. That's what I needed to hear.
And stand up, it's a little bit worse because you got about 20 guys all competing, and about 15 of them can win. So
any race, 15 of them can win every way. Oh yeah.
But the reality is you want like 100 guys chasing it, not 15.
Yes.
But it's even that, like, you want people to go to more than one event, and they don't, because part of it is because it's just expensive. And there's some other reasons, but one of the things IDF never did is kind of cater to these single event people, and almost everything they do, they're catering to the championships, the champions, which is fine, but you still have this other 95% of your membership you need to worry about. And you continue with this, like, I personally have always been against prize money. Now, having said that, I love prize money. My goal is
okay, good.
my goal is $100,000 prize money. But
you're going to explain that, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
but the
good.
thing is that right now IDF has been giving out $10,000 in prize money, roughly.
To the overall winner,
the 10 to the 10 winners, because we have about 7 or 8 categories, and then stand-up gets 3, so they get 2,500, 1,500, and 500, and everybody else gets like 500. So the problem is that to an individual, the $500 doesn't mean much, and no one's going to the race to win $500 because you're spending $2,000 to get there. And the only person that the money kind of means anything to is the $2,500 to the first place guy. So that $10,000 doesn't really go very far, but $10,000 is still a lot of money as a chunk that IDF can use to
do something
with it and grow the sport.
Can I clarify one thing? Are you talking about $10,000 being distributed to the winners for the overall
for the series?
For the series, so not for one race. I just want to make sure, because like someone was like, "Oh, if you win $2,500 at each event you go to, you could travel around the world." No. You win $2,500 for winning 6 races on 5 different continents.
So the way it works is, a couple years ago, IDF is at least at the World Cup was trying to get the organizers to put prize money in, but the race prize money typically comes from the organizer. Either they get sponsors to do it, or it's money that's left over. However, the only time IDF puts money into the prize pool is for the series. At the end of the year, the series sponsor, the series winner. Mm-hmm. And like I said, for stand-up, it's the top 3 guys. But this is for the entire series, so you have to go to 6 or 8 or 10 events to win.
And then you get $2,500 after spending like 10 grand.
Yeah. And after spending 10 or 20,000, I was talking to a friend of mine. He spent like 25. He got sponsored, but it was like $25,000. And then I think he took second place that year. So
we won $1,000 for spending $20,000. That's a really bad ROI.
Exactly. And so,
but you get to see the world.
Yeah, but nobody's doing it for the money.
No,
not yet. I'd love to change that. That's I guess when I sat down, I'd love to change that. These guys should be good. I mean, surfing. They get like $150,000 prize.
Golf
golf is that's a whole nother ball. But surfing is much closer to what we do, and they're getting $150,000 prize money at each event. So there's no reason why we can't do it, but it's priorities. And when I was working with IGSA, the number one problem we had was a lack of money. We were given us a potential space in a NASCAR booth. And I'm like, this is awesome. We're going to have 100,000 people walking by this booth. Well, what do we put there? We have no money to buy, stickers to sit there, put there. It's only $1,000 or $500, but we didn't have that money. So the first time IDF had extra money, I'm thinking, great, let's go hire a photographer for the year, or, there's tons of things we can do. And they just gave it away as prize money. And it was very frustrating to me, and so I was always against it. But the problem is,
we're on a very. This is weird. You're talking about stuff. My event. The first 2 people who got paid were Kyle, the videographer, and Monkey, the photographer.
Absolutely.
Because dude, it's like, hey, I can give you $20, or you can have 50 photos and a great video to look back on later. And by the way, here's 6 free donuts.
No, but that's the thing is that the money should be going into growing the sport. Mm-hmm. When I used to argue against this, a lot of people were like, oh, but whoever it was, so and so, they deserve the money. Yes, but the rest of us deserve a sport.
Great point.
Right now, we're at a point. Here's the thing. If COVID hadn't happened, I don't even know if we would have an organization right now, because for almost the entire time, IDF has been running at
a deficit. I got to assume.
Not quite a deficit, but they spend about 98% of their money every year. Maybe not quite that much. But we had, Bad Year a few years ago that basically spent the budget, that all the leftover budget. And then in 2019, they basically spent everything they brought in. And when I joined in 2020, there was no money. Like we were broke. We had like $2,000 in the bank.
And then bam, COVID.
And that was the silver lining in the cloud was COVID happened. Almost nobody canceled their subscription. And so at the end of the year, we had $35,000 in the bank, that's a pretty healthy way that you can start the next year. And there's a lot you can do with it. There's, a lot more you can hire, a lot more people you can hire. You can hire a lot more professionals. Like one of the things that we did was we hired somebody to help run our Instagram account. And, we were paying peanuts because that's all we can afford. But none of us had the time. None of the board members had the time to do it. We hired some. We had volunteers for a while, but they just
you get what you pay for.
And so I would rather see that you gotta prioritize it. Spend the money on trying to grow the sport, and then when you have a lot of money, now you can give away the prize money. And instead, the problem was that for years IDF was relying on riders that didn't race. And this is another little known fact is that
riders that didn't race.
Yeah, so you talk about working at a deficit. To a certain extent, IDF was running at a deficit, except that we had a ton of people that didn't race but were paying membership.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was getting at.
So, because what happened is, the membership was set up. Now, I have no problems with this. I think this was done. I personally like automatic payment.
And you're explaining this great right now because it's a tough system to understand, and you being part of it is really nice to have someone explain it all out.
So look, I'm lazy. I don't want to have to sit here and figure out what bills I have to pay every month. Pay everything; it's just automatic and it pays. So having an automatic payment is great. The problem is that if a bill gets paid every month, I have a pretty good idea that I'm paying a bill every month, even though it's automatic pay. I know I'm paying it. When I pay a bill every year, you forget about it. Now, everybody else in the world, every other system that I know of, will actually email you and say, hey, by the way, in a month or 6 weeks, you're going to get paid. In fact, I just got one, hey, in the middle of October, we're going to renew your $100 subscription to something. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, I get 5 of them a month. It's, hey, your cell phone, hey, your insurance, hey, this. Yeah.
I just got this one from, Amazon, Amazon Prime. Hey, by the way, we're going to charge you $120. And I'm like, man, it's not expensive now.
Exactly.
But at least but the thing is, I have the opportunity to cancel it, right? Mm-hmm. Well, IDF made a decision not to do that, and they didn't want to tell people, and the reason was they needed that money. And I actually complained about this to the president at the time. This is a few years ago, and he said, "Yeah, we're not going to change." And this is what I consider a dark pattern, and that you're taking money from people who don't even know you're taking money from them. If you're not paying attention to your PayPal account, you won't even know it. And every year we get half a dozen emails from somebody who's like, hey, you took money out of my account.
No offense. Every year, Troy Yardwaste. Troy Yardwaste. I'm so sorry.
I think we finally got him taken care of, but yeah, it was
yeah, I think he burned all of his documents and moved. I'm joking.
I wouldn't be surprised, but the thing is that what was happening is at one point we had like 1,000 members. So we're pulling in, $30,000 and we have 600 people racing. So you have 400 people paying $30 and not racing. Now, in a given year, you're going to get about 10% people in that position. Somebody who planned on racing and got hurt or whatever, or somebody was like, look, I don't mind spending $30 for 1 year. I'm going to race again in 2 years. But most of those people aren't doing that. And a lot of the people who were supportive of this were like, oh, those people are donating. They're not. No one's donating to the...
it's a bold assumption.
Right.
And, I know a lot of skaters, and I haven't seen them donate
exactly.
shit.
And look, I know there's some people out there who'll do it. I was at Maryhill this last weekend, or 2 weeks ago. Someone was like, oh, I'm going to toss in... He tossed in like $100 for the spaghetti, because he knew some other people wouldn't be able to pay. So there's some people out there who are like, yeah, I'll donate $1,000 or something. I don't know. But you don't just assume that. Like, ask for that. At one point, somebody asked me if they should put a donate button on the website. I'm like, sure, why not? I don't think anyone's going to click on it, but why not?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with donation. It's just don't assume that $30 a year is a donation. And that was, I think, a mistake. But anyways, that was how they were affording to pay for the entry, the prize money, is because you had all these extra people paying and not racing. And there was ways around it. And this is some of the things I was going to get into when I joined the board is, and I was looking at, hey, let's do, I don't know, let's do, not stickers, let's do patches, or, let's send out like $5 worth of stuff. You're paying $30, but you're getting something in return. Not the best return on your investment, but at least you're getting something.
Yeah.
Today
you're getting a
nothing.
sticker. You're getting, right. I mean, the seasons pass, for example, like I know people who hang their seasons pass for their ski resort, every time.
Right. And what I wanted to do is do a small, nice patch with a year on it. And you only get that if you're a member. And at some point, people are gonna be like, "Yeah, I'll keep spending the $30 and not
just to get the patch." Yeah, right. I've collected Pokemon cards. I understand how this works.
Exactly. But but they weren't doing anything. But then that money, rather than taking that $10,000 and trying to grow it, they just gave it away. And one year, someone said, "Oh, well, that's they're advertising it as a return on investment." And I'm like, "Yeah, but none of the racers are saying, oh, I'm going to race this year because there's $2,500 in prize money." You're not going to, you might get one or two guys go to a race that wouldn't go to a race because they were close to winning. Mm-hmm. That's it. So you're getting like 3 entries. It's not worth it.
Extra, yeah.
Right. So that's where I was coming back to what I was saying, that it's a negative proposition. There's, for everybody, for the riders, it's a negative proposition. And for the organizer, it's a negative value proposition. And as an organizer, I couldn't do it. But I thought, well, maybe, as a board member, I could help change things and improve things. And so the first year I tried to run Maryhill. We didn't get enough riders the next year. I'd already lost enough money the first year. I was going to lose another shit ton of money the next year.
Oh yeah.
And so we had to cancel, and unfortunately people got upset at us. But when we canceled, we had $8,000 in the bank. We were estimating between $25,000 and $30,000 to put it on. I was going to lose another $15,000, $25,000 to put this race on. And we knew large groups of people we were expecting to come weren't coming.
Mm-hmm. And I remember there being a lot of commotion going on about that event. And I, as somebody who's done something, if you're going to lose money putting in all that extra effort, like no one can force you to do that. So like when you guys are like, hey, like this isn't like we're going to lose money. It's like, don't do it. Like, because ultimately you may be able to take that money later on and do it again.
Right. Well, what happened the year before is I got like 2 hours of sleep the whole weekend.
Damn, you got a lot of sleep for an event organizer.
Yeah. But, we ended up getting I brought a Jumbotron out, and it was cool.
You tried to do it, but more than just a longboard race, which I think is great.
And, had this cool broadcast booth. I never got to see it. Like, I was working the whole time. I never got up from my chair. Like, I don't even think I ate. And the funny thing is I've done things where I've like fallen asleep, like standing up. This time, like I was so wired working, like I was wide awake even on the 2 hours of sleep. But, we lost a bunch of money that year. And the next year it was just like, can't do it again. And so we lost Maryhill because, basically Dino stepped back in and said, hey, we're going to do it again. And so I was like, okay, now what do I do? Washington State. Yeah, so Washington State, ironically enough, doesn't have that many great roads for racing. And so there's a few out there, but not a ton of them. So
it's like there's a bunch of great roads, but is it a great road to have a race? Are you like, well, yeah, that's the main thing,
Well, like we have this really interesting road, probably needs to be repaved, but we have this interesting road up north. And I went to it and looked it out, and I'm like, I can't afford to protect the road. There's this cliff off the side. This cliff, I can't afford it. It's going to cost $20,000 or $30,000.
Is it near a ski resort?
No, not this particular one.
Okay.
So at some point, maybe you and I will chat, and maybe we can find another road that I can put an event on. But that's the problem. There's not many good roads around here. And
we'll need to chat. I've got some.
I'm still interested.
Yeah, that's another podcast. Yeah. We'll come back and people will be like, "Oh my God, look, Nate and Chris are doing this thing." But
so I'm still interested, but I want to do something closer to home first and iron out some of the stuff before I do something further away. We had people, when we were doing Windwalk, we had people call us all around the country. Oh, I got a hill, put a race on here. And I'm like, let me get this one done first.
Yeah, let me tell you exactly. I mean, Yes. Sorry. When you said that, my brain just like went from 4,000 RPMs to 9,000 RPMs. I was like, holy shit, this is the missing dot because I've been working on something for a while and it sounds like you might be a great person. But I want you to continue.
So
Washington doesn't have a bunch of great roads at the moment.
So yeah, Washington doesn't have a lot of great roads. There are some roads out there. It's just, some take more work than others. And like one of the problems that Maryhill has, it's a great road. It's out in the middle of nowhere. And so I've been looking for something a little bit closer to civilization because I want to be able to get, the mom and pop, coffee shop to donate $500. You can't do that in Maryhill. There's first of all, there's no mom and pop coffee shops, but if they are, there's not enough people for them. They're too far away. There's not enough people.
They're 10 miles away if they're close.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyways, not to get too much into it that we already have, the opportunity came up with, so after we lost Maryhill, I tried to run for the board in 2019 and I failed miserably. You're supposed to send in a photograph and I didn't. I got an error message and didn't see it. And so I thought I registered, but I hadn't. And then the list of names came out and my name wasn't on there. And I'm like, what's going on? So, but it was my fault. I couldn't blame anybody else. I'm the one who.
Oh, that's the worst feeling.
Yeah. So, what happened was there was a fallout in the board members for some reason. And so one of the board members quit like a week after the vote. So.
Wow. Interesting.
For a variety of reasons, the 2019 vote happened in the middle of the season. So the 6 board members that were left were like, let's get through the season. And then in the fall, probably closer in the winter, they approached me and said they knew I was interested. I have a lot of experience. I put races on. And so they said, hey, you're interested. And I was interested because, well, I was already going to run. But, without my own event, the next step was to join IDF. And so in, I think, February, I actually became an official board member a month before COVID hit.
Wah, wah, wah.
Now, that was very interesting, but, I kind of started a little bit late. They were just finishing up a rule book. We were trying to get the rule book set for the races. We had Australia was starting 1st of March, I think, or middle of March. And then COVID hit, and that was a nightmare.
How long into COVID did you guys realize that you weren't going to be running an entire season? Was it like, oh, this will only be 2 weeks? Because I had the same thing.
So I don't know how much time we've got, but what happened was I actually go to the basketball games, NCAA tournament games. I try to go every year. They take place around Labor Day, around St. Paddy's Day, middle of March. So early March, I'm paying attention to the COVID thing because I have tickets. And I have a plane ticket to the event in Sacramento. And I'm like, are we going to have it? Are we going to have it? And every day I'm watching it and trying to keep track. And I actually bought my plane tickets on Sunday because I finally decided they're going to have it. They haven't canceled it yet. So on Sunday, I buy my plane tickets. The local tournament started Wednesday. Game happened. I wake up Thursday morning and I turn the TV on because my game's supposed to start at like 10 a.m. My team's supposed to be on. I wake up, turn the TV on, and it's an empty arena. And I'm like, this doesn't sound good.
This is not the way that most tournaments start.
Well, it turns out Wednesday night, if anybody remembers, Wednesday night, one of the NBA players got COVID, and it kind of started the domino effect. NBA canceled the next day. The first thing they did was they canceled spectators in the Pac-12 tournament. And then like a few hours later, they canceled the tournament. I think later that afternoon, they canceled the NCAA tournament. The same day, I think baseball canceled, hockey canceled. Like pretty much around the entire world, within 36 hours, like everybody but like cricket canceled. And cricket was like, I think it was cricket, or maybe it was rugby. For the first week or two, they ran the event, but they had no spectators. But like everybody else canceled. So that was Thursday, and I get on with the board members. I'm like, guys, we have to do something. Like, we have an event coming up in Australia next week, and we need to talk about this. And my fear was that Australia was going to lock down before people got there, and so we had a meeting on Saturday, and I had wanted to make a decision earlier, but everyone's like, hey, we're doing our normal meeting Saturday morning. Let's meet. So Saturday morning we meet, and we decide. Look, one of the problems that IDF has, by the way, not to change the subject, but one of the problems that IDF has is we don't have a ton of leverage over organizers. All we do is sanction the event. We have the rules but organizers can kind of do what they want. And there's not a lot we can do. Unfortunately, it's one of the problems and one of the things that GGA has complained about. So the organizers in Australia had indicated that they're going to race no matter what. Well, that isn't good. And we can't cancel the event. It's not our event. So we pulled our sanctioning. Unfortunately, we kind of screwed up our timing. The problem is we met early Saturday morning, which was Saturday night Australia time. And we wanted to talk to some of the people who we knew were going to fly that day. We knew most of the internationals who were going to Australia. And our plan was to talk to the organizers on Australia morning day. And through the day, it was a mess. Some stuff got crossed, and we actually published our announcement that we're pulling sanctioning before Australia woke up. And so the Australians were upset because the organizers woke up to this message. It was definitely it was not our intention. It was a mistake on our side. It was just things were a mess. So the Australians,
a global pandemic ruined something. Whoa!
Hang on. So the Australians were unhappy. They actually went ahead. So a couple things happened. The Monday following, Australia imposed quarantine on all internationals. So we did the absolute right thing. Because anybody who traveled there would not have been able to go to the race.
Yeah.
They went ahead and had the race. And I talked to some people. Nobody got COVID, but a few people got sick. Because this is the issue. You've been to races. This camp flu is definitely true. I've been to races where one person's sick. At the end of the event, half the people are sick.
Oh yeah, I don't go to any event without like a handful of drugs. Like I mean, like vitamin D, a bunch of emergency, extra water. I have zinc, and people were like, "Why do you have all that?" But like, dude, I'm about to hop into a U-Haul with people who don't wipe their hands after they crap. Like, are you kidding me?
And so this is so between that and the fact that I was afraid of what the Australian government would do, we had to do what we did.
You made the right choice. I mean,
we made the right choice. And what happened was Newton's Playground was the week after. So they had the race. Mm-hmm. The next race was Newton Playground. That was canceled by the government. And Australia was unhappy with us, but it's like...
That's how you know you've made it, when people are unhappy.
So, but we were hopeful, optimistic. Our next event was into June, so we have 4 months. And so we're like, look, let's wait as long as we can. Like, it's 2 weeks to slow the spread. Maybe things will get better. It's summertime. It's winter flu's dying off. Nobody knew, right? So we waited. We made the decision at the beginning of May, which I thought was too soon, but apparently not. Here it is, a year and a half later.
I was about to say, yeah, hindsight's really good.
I thought it was too soon, but in the 1st of May, we finally decided, like, look, we have to cancel the season. And we were still hopeful that we might have some races at the end of the year. I'm drawing a blank now. Carl, who is our president, he runs Seaside in the Philippines, and he's like, look, I can put a race on at the drop of a hat. So we were actually planning on I shouldn't say planning. We were hopeful to maybe have a December race. Maybe we just have a one race championship for the year. Who knows? So that was in our bag. But basically, we in 1st of May, we decided to cancel the season. Then, as we got to the next year, so now we're going to take a step back and try to build some stuff up and put some work into it. But look, that was a hard year for everybody. Last year. This year was much easier, but it's a hard year for everybody. People are working from home. One of our board members of Peru. Peru has lost so many people.
Is this Luis?
Yeah, Luis. He's still a board member, but Peru was hit hard. Mexico was hit really hard. One of our board members was Mexican. Carl, he was trying to buy a house and move closer to where his races were, and like
in the Philippines, right?
In the Philippines. So I think he lives in Manila, but he was trying to move to his race, I think, on the other side of the island, and they had bought a house, and like everything got locked down. They couldn't go to their house, and several of the members had lost their jobs. So several of the board members had lost their jobs because of the things closing and stuff. And so it was a really hard time for everybody. And we still tried. We still met every 2 weeks, and we still try to fix some stuff. We spent the year trying to iron out a broadcast deal with a broadcaster. We wanted to move the headquarters for several reasons, and we even started putting an event together, a list together for this year. But everybody was worried. People weren't sure if they wanted an event. We were trying to talk about doing regional events instead of a regional series instead of a World Series, because we knew Australia was going to be locked down until at least mid-July. We knew this, a year ago. So it was just really tough. And we had a list of races that people were interested in doing. Like a couple people in Europe were really gung-ho. In fact, they were hopeful until about February of this year to have races. In fact, Italy just went ahead and had a race a couple weeks ago.
I was about to say, there's been a lot of events in Europe going on, but not as many like big races. There've been more free rides.
There've been free rides. There's been a few races, but they've been fairly local. Until about a few months ago, like Czech Republic is closed down. That's where Kazakov is. Their borders were closed to everybody because they were hit pretty bad as well. Things have gotten better, and after Maryhill, I was talking to Dino, who runs Maryhill, and he's very optimistic for next year. He said we may still have to do some of the things we did this time with wear the mask and stuff, but he expects to be able to run the events he wants to run next year. So we're very hopeful that next year is going to be better. But like DGA had an announcement today, and they're kind of doing what we were talking about doing, which is more regional, more continental type series. Mainly because Australia probably be locked down for another year. That would be my guess.
Can I ask 2 questions just to jump in really? Yeah. Question 1. An international organization is super difficult. And currently the GGA is made up of primarily North American people. Yes. I believe the active board, not the advisory board, is pretty much all.
Almost. So one of the things that we did, when we moved the federation from France to Switzerland, I'm going to answer a couple other questions.
Okay.
One of the reasons we did that, there's a couple of main reasons.
Yeah, this is the real stuff. Like the secrets.
Yeah.
Tell me.
So one of the biggest reasons I wanted to move it is France has the type of thing we were organized under limits you to 60,000 euros a profit that's outside of your charter. And that may sound like a lot of money, but it's not that much. And we were trying to work on this broadcast deal. If this broadcast deal happened,
you're nuking that 60,000 immediately.
The thing is like look, one of the things what I like to point out is t-shirts. If you sell t-shirts if you make $10 a shirt, that's 6,000 shirts. Now I'm using dollars and euros interchangeably. That's 6,000 shirts, right? That's 60,000. 6,000 isn't that many.
It's easy to get there when you start going around and because it's an international thing, you're going to all these different events, people, bystanders, things like that.
Look, we had, let's say you have 20 events, 6,000, that's like what, 300 shirts an event? Which that may sound like a lot now, and it kind of is now, but a year or two down the road, if we have 20,000 spectators, like that's easy. Now you could argue, so the charter, the IDF charter is to promote the sport. You could argue that a t-shirt promotes the sport. Exactly.
I don't wear this because it's the only shirt in existence.
But there's other things that we would have made money off of, and I didn't want to get into that legality of
becoming a little too successful.
Yeah, and so that was one reason. Another reason is that like every year, every 2 years, we had to in person in French in Strasbourg, sign some piece of paperwork or something. I don't know what it was. And so there was just some issues like that it just made it difficult. And in fact, I don't even know if we had followed some of those rules, right? But moving to Switzerland solves a bunch of those issues, and it clears up some stuff, and it made things easier. And so we put that in motion, and at the same time, we made some changes to the Constitution. Maybe we didn't quite do this right, but one of the changes we made to the Constitution was to try to add some diversity to the board. And so it's really hard to do. So we worded it such that you had to have at least one person from every continent before you take a second person from a particular continent. Mm-hmm. And what that meant is this particular board ran on a group of 8 Americans. I ran, Lewis ran, who's on board from Peru. And then James Hopkins from Australia. I believe he's run Newtons in the past, and he's worked with Azra.
He's been around for a while.
Well, the 3 of us got the fewest votes, and the skaters from America all got the most votes. But they're all from America, we put Lewis and James on the board, and so that's how we got. That's the only reason why there's some non-Americans on the board. To get back to your original question.
And then there's a difference between the IDF board that was elected and the GGA board that's posted. I don't know if I'm missing that.
So the GGA, there was 8 guys, and they posted their board, and that was how they were running. They were running they were running as a group of people, and 5 of them got elected. And we just heard today that one of them quit for personal reasons. But so 3 of those people that weren't on the GGA board, or were listed on the GGA board, are not on the IDF board, and they're not on the. So IDF came and said, "Oh, we're changing our name to GGA," which I don't know what that means, but so they're not on the other board, despite the fact that GGA still has them listed. GGA can't just add people to the board willy nilly. I mean, I shouldn't say that. IDF can't just add people to the board willy nilly
because I guess it gets a little convoluted. The IDF the International Downhill Federation, stated as the IDF, wanted to change their name from the IDF for reasons that relate to the Israeli Defense Force, and so they wanted to change it to the GGA in order to clear that up. Right. And which,
I understand what they're saying. I think at the beginning, IDF was not a good name, but after 8 years, it's we have 40,000 plus people on Facebook, and I don't know how many people on our Instagram. We get a decent, not as much as we could, but we get a decent traffic on our website. Changing the name is not really the smartest move.
No, it's not. Oh.
And the reason the claim is that if you type in IDF, just IDF into a website or into a browser, you'll probably get International Defense Force.
Yeah, well, that's the same thing when you type in barrels into the Google search bar. You don't get bushings. You have to be IDF longboarding, and it pops up right away.
Over the last year, for a variety of reasons, I spent a lot of time doing some research on a lot of the IOC federations, and I'd say about 75% of the federations.
International Olympic Committee federations.
The Olympic federations. And there's a bunch of them. And I would say about half of them, if you type their name in, you're not going to get them as your number 1 or number 2 topic. Some of the bigger ones, like FIFA, which is the soccer, the football federation, or what's the ski federation, ILS or something?
FIS.
FIS. If you type those in, you'll get that. That's the bigger ones. But for the smaller ones, you'll type that in and you'll get all kinds of random stuff. And it also depends on where in the world you are. So I think personally, the SEO concept is a little bit. It was a big stretch. I think you're losing any of the SEO you have today, and it's going to take you years to gain back just what you have today. And they're like, oh, we're always going to lose to IDF. Guess what? Most of the other federations are losing to somebody else as well, and they're doing just fine. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I got some other reasons. I have some suspicions of what their reasons are, but their official one is because the SEO, search engine optimization.
Yep.
And it makes a little bit of sense. I mean, there was a few people when IDF first formed, like, hey, this is a dumb name. But, we used it for 8 years, and everybody's used to it. The other big thing that they've done is they've changed the color scheme.
I saw that. They went to a nice green and tan, which was,
I'm not sure if nice was the term I was thinking of, but yeah, they went to this green. And as far as like a logo goes, I don't know what they're planning on doing for a logo. So IDF has this interesting set of triangles, which is supposed to invoke a mountain. And, I didn't really like it at the beginning, but I like it now.
When you see it for 8 years, it definitely...
Right. And look, it conveys, it's a mountain. It's a mountain shape, and it looked kind of cool. And I think it would look great on a patch.
Or a T-shirt, or a sticker, yeah.
Right. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. The downside to what they're currently doing is they decided to move the organization again.
You guys moved it from France to Switzerland.
So we moved it from France to Switzerland. Now, Switzerland has what's called cantons. Cantons are kind of like states. But they're or counties, I guess, would probably be a better explanation. They're much smaller. No, states are a better explanation. And the cantons have different rules, but they're mostly the same. We're currently headquartered in, I think it's Basel. And we're actually in a law firm there. Like, that's our official address, is some law firm. The thing is that for IOC, the majority of the IOC headquarters are in Lausanne, because that's where IOC is. Lausanne, it's on the other side of Switzerland from it. Lausanne is much closer to where Grenoble and
spell it for me.
Luassa.
Okay.
Lausanne. It's on the other side of Lake Geneva, and it's closer to. It's up in the mountains basically, whereas Basel's in the flatland of Switzerland. And Lausanne is much closer to Chemrus, that we were talking about at the beginning of the show. But Lausanne is where IOC is headquartered, and so most of the other international sports are also headquartered there. And so Brewer, who's the GGA
president,
well, I can't say he's the president, because as far as I know, they've never had a meeting that elected him.
What does the website say for the Global Gravity Association?
I believe it lists him as president, but there's never been an official.
Okay, this is something that I've said as well. Is you can't. I don't know. It's a little. There are a lot of things that I have questions about.
Right. Yes,
so
you're not the only one.
Okay,
but back to the. So most of the IOC organizations are headquartered in Lausanne, and Brewer decided, oh well, we should also be headquartered there, and he has said that to get the Silicon Valley effect, which, for people who don't know, Silicon Valley is where 95% of the software companies are, Apple and Google and tons of others. And what happens is when you have an effect like this is you have one or two big companies, those people quit and form their other companies, but they're still living there, so they create a new company, and then that company gets bigger, and then those people quit and they start their own company, and before you know it, you have 1,000 software companies. That's Silicon Valley. It actually started as hardware. That's where Motorola and Intel were back in the 50s and 60s, and where Xerox PARC was. But this effect of where you have people going from one company to another. Like if you don't like your job, you've got 50 other companies doing the same thing in the same area. You don't have to move and travel. So he wants to move to Lausanne for the Silicon Valley effect, because that's where all the other organizations IOCs are. Well, that's great if you have a physical presence. We don't have a physical presence in Switzerland. Right now, as we discussed, 5 of the board members are here in America. Now, maybe 5 or 10 years or 20 years down the road, we'll have a building with a staff and they'll have a presence there, but they don't today. So moving the corporation or moving the federation to Lausanne for that reason is kind of a waste of money.
Does it cost money to do that?
I've heard rumor that they're looking at between $6,000 and $20,000 to reestablish the federation in Lausanne, which is insane because we're already a federation in Switzerland, and we should just be able to basically do a change of address to move to a different place. But they have, as far as I can tell, they have received some bad information, and they don't believe that the IDF actually exists today. They've mentioned in several places that we failed to complete creating the IDF in Switzerland, and that's just not true. We did everything we needed to do. We set up the thing is what's called a Verein, which is a very Swiss concept, and it's a decentralized federation, and it gives us a lot of control. Control is not really the word I wanted us to use. It gives us a lot of flexibility. Like we didn't have the issue with the money and stuff like that. But like FIFA is run as a Verein. And one of the things I heard is they were told that this Verein wasn't quite for an association, except that that's one of the things it's for. So I don't know what they've been told, why exactly they're spending any money to move the federation. I suspect part of it is to legitimize the name, because it's still IDF in the paperwork.
And so if they move it, then they can be GGA when they move it. Okay.
But I don't know.
$20,000 or $6,000 to change the name is a lot of money.
Well, look, right now the claim is they've got about $45,000 in their coffers, and that may sound like a lot of money, but it really isn't.
No.
IDF was typically spending between $50,000 and $75,000 a year for a variety of things, upkeep on the timing system, sending people to the races, to organizers to the not organizers to the IGSA members, IDF members to the races. Just running the website costs money. Like we're paying people to do the
social media things like
all this stuff costs money. Like we cut everything off last year, and we still spent like $5,000. Now part of that was we bought a bunch of GoPros that haven't been used.
I was about to say, you bought a bunch of GoPros so that people could have, so you'd have, once again, you were investing. You bought the GoPros to put them on riders. So when they're riding down the track, you have all this footage to be able to share later to help grow and promote the sport. COVID was like, no.
What happened was we had 2 sets of GoPros. We had we had 4s and 5s, and we didn't have like enough to do. We didn't have 12 to run at Maryhill. So we decided to buy, I don't know what we bought. I think we bought 6 of the 6s or 7s. I think it was 7s. And it was actually a lot of money. It was like $2,500. And we got them in early March. We're all happy. We were getting them prepared to get sent to Australia. And then COVID hit. So they've never even been opened.
Well, best laid plans. And the good thing is it's not an avocado and it still works. So you're good to go there.
But the point was we still spent $5,000 or $6,000 and we didn't really do anything. And that just shows you how much it costs just to run an organization.
Yeah.
So anyways, we'll see what happens.
Okay. And so there were a couple of questions that kind of like popped into my mind as you were talking about that. One is, you said that there's a slight difference. We kind of mentioned there's a slight difference between the elected members of the IDF this year and the people that are currently represented on the website.
Yeah. So the people that are represented on the GGA website I haven't actually been out to the website in a while, but there was 8 people that were running for the IDF board. And those 8 people were listed as the GGA board. This is before they joined IDF. This was,
so they had set up the GGA and they had a list of people, and then those people ran for IDF positions?
Correct.
Okay, so GGA came, I thought that the IDF transitioned into the GGA.
Well, that's what they want. Yes.
But that's the goal.
What they did was this group of people, most of them photographers, they wanted to basically take over IDF. And before they were elected, they'd already came up with the name GGA. They created the Global Gravity Association website and listed what their platform was. And then they told everybody, I'm running, go to the GGA website to see my platform. And on that website, it listed, here's the 8 people on the board. I don't think that has changed at all.
Okay.
So technically, the IDF board members are still the IDF board members for GGA, but the list on the website is just
very confusing. Okay, because I've been diving into this over the last. I mean, I'm glad that you came on the podcast, but one of the reasons that kind of like sparked this whole thing was there was a comment made about money moving that made me go down the rabbit hole. And I don't necessarily know if I want to dive into the money. I don't know if
I do, because some things were said that were untrue. And I'd like to clear this up.
Thank you.
So what happened was the IDF has not been using a bank account for years. I don't really get into that aspect of it, but IDF had been using PayPal when I started. So when I joined, you got to remember, I was only a member for 1 year, a board member for 1 year. When I joined, I was like, look, we got to solve this bank account issue because PayPal it's not a bank, and it's not easy to get a bank account in another country. But what happened was at some point we decided, well, the first thing we were trying to do was we do have a bank account. We just don't have access to it. And there's a few $1,000s in that bank account. It took us a while to get in touch with that person. And they finally said, look, this is like my personal bank account with a separate account. The money's there and I'll transfer it to a bank account. So it was like halfway through the year, like, okay, we have to get a bank account.
To be okay, so essentially, person X has like a checking account, and they also have a couple $1,000s extra in their other
it's in a separate it's in a separate account, so it's safe. It's not mingled with their money, but it's their personal account, so he doesn't want to give it away, right?
Yeah.
So, but what happened was that, this time we decided for sure we were going to move to Switzerland. And for a variety of reasons, you want your main bank to be in the same country as your
federation is located.
Or your company is, I should say, federation in this case. And you definitely don't want it in America. USA has some poor laws around banks, especially for international stuff.
Okay, so there's a reason. I was about to ask, is there a reason why it's not in America when so many people are in America?
I mean, if our federation was headquartered here, we wouldn't really have a choice. But there's just some tax liabilities. Like, America is one of the few countries in the world where if you're a citizen, you owe tax no matter where you live.
Okay, so if you're living in Australia but you're an American citizen, you pay. Okay, interesting.
So, anyways, there's some laws that America is, anyways, you just don't want to get into it. It's easier to have an international bank. Well, we decided we were going to move, and so we said, okay, well, after we move it, we'll get a bank account set up. It just doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah, you got to put the horse before the cart,
right? And we're not doing anything this year, so leaving it in PayPal is okay for now.
Mm-hmm.
The law firm we were working with had agreed to set up a bank account for us for free, which is, to be honest, insane. We got a really good deal with these guys, and they were going to set the bank account up for us. Well, we finalized that deal, I think it was January 14th. The election was January 21st, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no reason to create a bank account at that point, because we were probably going to have to sign some paperwork, and then a week later we're going to have to
transfer
the new board would have to sign the paperwork. Again, we're not spending any money. We'll wait a week. Well, I don't know what happened. They never set up the bank account, ever. And they complained about not having a bank account for the last 8 months. Well, about 2 months ago, the middle of July, PayPal changed their terms and conditions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the exact story, but what happened was IDF had to prove they were IDF to maintain control of the account. And a couple things happened. One was the person who created the account originally 6 years ago, his name was still on the account. And we couldn't get a hold of him, or they couldn't get a hold of him. And then on top of that, like, we had actually disbanded the IDF in France, although I don't.
So there's a couple things that are like leading to this.
There was a couple things going on. So now, and then what happened was they were given like 2 weeks to solve this issue. I don't know what, it was a really short time frame. A little bit longer than I would have thought, but it was still, a week or two. And
2 weeks to fix your money feels like 10 seconds too. Yeah.
Yes. And so, they were scrambling, and but they don't have a bank account. If they had a bank account, this would have been easy. You just swipe all the money into the bank account, and who cares? And it sounds like after the meeting today, it sounds like they solved the IDF PayPal issue. But at the time, they didn't want the money to be frozen. And PayPal is notorious for this. They've frozen lots of accounts, and people have lost lots of money.
Yep.
Which is one reason why you don't want to leave a large sum of money sitting in there.
I've had a PayPal account for as long as this place has been going, and I try to leave nothing in there that I wouldn't be able to live without.
Yeah, when I was doing our Windwalk, I tried to keep like $1,000 in there to make it easy to pay refunds.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it was a small number, but anyways, at the last moment, Breitwer decided to create a new account under a GGA address, a new PayPal account under a GGA address, and he transferred the money into that account. Some people have accused him of stealing the money and putting it into a personal account. I can't say if it's a personal account or not a personal account, but he did what anybody would have done. Like, where else are you going to do with this $45,000? You can't leave it there because it's going to get frozen. You got to move it somewhere. Where do you move it? And so he did probably the only thing he could do in the time frame that he had. And maybe it was possible he could have created a bank account and moved it in there, but you're still going to get the same accusation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what the accusation was. That's essentially what happened. James Hopkins actually posted a timeline of the events that happened. The same thing would have happened like if we were on the board. It was the same issue. It was like PayPal just decided, hey, we're gonna check your credentials basically, and you're not who you say you are. And so that's what happened. And part of it was, we should have been probably each board should have kind of taken over the PayPal account as we've gone, and that never happened. In the transition. So it's everybody's fault, really. But Brewer did what he had to do just to
not lose $45,000
to keep the money.
And so the optics of it, and the way that it was framed, may not necessarily have been the actuality of what.
Right. Well, I mean, my understanding is he moved it into a PayPal account called Aaron@gga.com or whatever. And so it looks like a personal account, but the downside is, my understanding is they don't have a treasurer. They're supposed to have a treasurer. They're supposed to have a treasurer and a secretary and a president, but they've never elected a treasurer. So you have one person in charge of the financing system in GDA today, which is
the president.
Yeah, which is not the way an organization should be run. You should have, multiple people in charge, so you don't have one person, responsible. But So that's what happened. So some people looked at this and said, "Hey, look, he's still in the money." No, he's not still in the money. At least not yet. I mean, maybe, who knows? But right now the money's safe, and it's in a particular account that Aaron has, who's in charge of. But he's also in charge of the other one, so like nothing has changed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's okay. So that's what happened there. And then what was you said that the IDF had a meeting today. What were the majority points on that?
So the biggest thing today, he wanted to go over what they've been up to. His big thing was, hey, we're still trying to figure out making IDF legal, which I don't quite understand. He said we're following the best practices to move to Lausanne, and it's like, well, no, best practice would be not spend any money and leave it where it is. But the other big thing is they want to do they're looking at doing regional events. And to be honest, really the big takeaway is we've done some stuff. COVID is still happening. We're still unsure. Here's some of the things we're thinking about. The one that they're thinking about trying to do regional events. He talked about he wants to set up some time trial events, which doesn't make sense to me, because if you want time trials, you run your qualifying system and there's your time trial. But time trials are actually kind of boring. So
I hate time trials. It's the day at Maryhill that I don't attend.
Right. And the thing is, as a broadcaster, you can make it interesting. I've watched the downhill skiing and Olympics.
Whoa, downhill skiing is very different, because about a third of those people make it to the bottom.
Yes,
it'd be a very different activity if like a third of
time. It's the announcers. One of the most exciting events I've ever been to was Tiolo. We had a jumbotron.
Tiolo, Italy, right?
Yeah, Tiolo, Italy. We had a jumbotron. I don't know, half-tron, and Marcus was. Yeah, because it's this truck that comes up. It was
a jumbo shrimp Tron. Yeah. Okay, I love it.
And Marcus was announcing. And in time trials, what we did in the second heat, or the second round, we ran it in reverse order. And one of the first guys who came down set a really high time, fast time. I don't know what happened in his first run. He crashed or something. And every person down here was almost close and didn't beat him. Oh, almost close and didn't beat him. Almost close. And it was so exciting. I was one of the first people down because I had a slow time, so I got to watch the whole thing at the bottom. And I think the last person came down beat him by a split second, and we didn't even know if he got the top time until like the photo finish type thing. And it was really exciting. If you have a good announcer and you have like a jumbotron, qualifying can be very exciting.
Okay,
we don't have that in most of our events.
No, typically at Maryhill, I just sit at the bottom under shade. It's pretty miserable. And then you wait to hear like, oh, so-and-so, 309. You're like, pathetic.
Exactly. So anyways, so they announced they want to do some time trials. I don't know exactly what that means. Another big thing is Zach Madem has been rewriting the rule book. And so they actually published on their Discord rule book. It's not quite published, but pre-published.
The frame's there.
Yeah, pre-published, or like if you're interested. I think those are the big major talking points.
Okay.
One thing that's interesting to me is he actually announced and he said publicly that they will refuse to make any public comment on Facebook. And again, this is you have 40,000 users on this, 40,000 plus subscribers on Facebook, and you don't want to use it to promote the sport is
that's silly. That's
questionable.
That's silly. I'm sorry. That's just not a good idea. If I was a business and I was like, I don't have Instagram or Facebook, but catch me on Discord, I just knock 95% of my potential people who are going to find me out of the window.
I understand the reasoning. So they want to own their content. And when you use Facebook, you don't own your content. The problem with Discord is, well, first of all, it's just a tool. It's one tool in your toolbox. And they basically thrown the rest of the toolbox away. But the problem with the Discord is it's good for a live chat. It's not good for an ongoing discussion, asynchronous discussion. It's not good for some random person to find out information. If I work for the New York Times as a reporter and I want information on downhill, I'm not going to go to some Discord I don't know about.
No.
And that's the problem. To grow the sport, we need spectators.
You need to be in front of people.
Yes.
And Instagram and TikTok and Facebook are the most common avenues besides running down the street with a sign.
Right, but you need spectators. The sport is going to grow with spectators, and as you get spectators, you get more. Some of those spectators can be like, "Hey, I want to do that." That's how I did it. I saw it on TV. At Maryhill, this last Maryhill, we had a ton of new people. Now, I didn't actually talk to anybody, but some other people did, and they were like, yeah, we saw it on YouTube. Well, I didn't hear anybody say I saw it on Discord.
I mean...
and, you mentioned TikTok. So one of the last things I did as a board member, I spent like a month. I cut up all of our point of view footage into 15 and 30-second clips.
And just take the hot stuff and put it out there.
And the idea was we would start posting like one a week. Have you seen any of it?
No.
Yeah, they haven't posted any of it.
No, but then again, I've also been incredibly critical, and I've gone through all of the articles of association for both the GGA and the IDF to figure out what the differences are. And there's a couple things that are suspicious that are like, whoa, you could interpret this very negatively. Specifically, I believe it's Article 19, Section 5 in the IDF doesn't allow for the remuneration of its board members.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing.
And then I've also seen the social media presence go completely downhill, and I've been really critical. I was like, you guys have a bunch of photographers. How come you're not posting anything to Instagram and Facebook? You're trying to promote the sport. Aren't you guys here to promote the sport? Like,
you're preaching to the choir.
They didn't mention Maryhill. They didn't mention Acme. They were at both events.
So they did today. They did today, which I was kind of surprised.
Good. Maryhill's coming up, right?
No, but they mentioned that. They did mention Tepe. They did mention Tepe, which is coming up next month, although it's sold out. So sorry if you don't have tickets, but... I want to touch on the thing you just mentioned about paying remuneration.
Yeah.
I don't know about Swiss law, but in French law and in American law, a board member cannot be paid for board member duties. It's illegal. It's illegal to pay. And one of the things that they've done is they basically said, oh, if you're a board member, you have to agree to work so many hours, and then you can get paid after that or something like this.
5. And
I'm like, I actually told Aaron this, and I said, that's questionable. Like, that questionable, I'm not a lawyer, I don't know, but that's kind of that's a gray area. Now, I don't, the IDF rule is interesting, but my personal belief is if you're doing something that's not a board member duty, I think you should be able to get paid for it, whether you're a board member or not. For example, I spent most of last year rewriting the website, which I'm actually going to, we'll see what happens. But I didn't get finished before the election, unfortunately, partially because I got COVID myself and I was out for 2 or 3 months. Yeah, it's
terrible.
It's not that bad. It's just really, actually, to be honest, it's not as bad as it sounds, other than from a mind point of view, brain point of view, I was in a brain fog for a few months. So I didn't get any work done while that happened. But the point I was trying to make is, I rewrote the website and I didn't get paid for it, which is fine, but I think it would have been okay if I, had gotten paid for it. Or if I went to, like many of these guys were photographers, if they went to the races and took photos as photographers, yeah, they probably should get paid. I personally think is one of the things I wanted to push for is I wanted to pay the corner marshals. Now, I'm not sure I buy into the whole $15
minimum wage,
livable wage, because you're working for a weekend. But it comes back to what we talked about with volunteers. If you pay people, you have a little bit more control over them. They're more likely to show up. You're more likely to get people. But it's and also, like, it takes a lot of people to run an event, and most of the IDF board members who went to the events and did timing and stuff, they're using their vacation time, and they're sitting there in the hot sun or in the cold rain, running the timing,
not skating.
And yeah, we should pay them. That's what I'd rather pay them the $500 an event than the $10,000 prize money, because they're more likely to do it again, and we can actually have an event in the future.
So for the board, so what you're talking about is like so non-event. So all the stuff you do as a board to like make things happen, you are based under like the kind of law, like you shouldn't be paid for that. But the moment that you step outside and you're at the event and you're starting to do things that are not IDF specific board tasks.
But at the same time, I feel that the original board kind of screwed up in that they kind of positioned this, if you're on the board, you do things. And if you're not on the board, you can volunteer, but the original board was really hard with volunteers. And so a lot of people kind of felt like, if I want to volunteer, I have to run and be on the board. Well, the reality is the board should have met like once a month or once a quarter and like go over the rule book and stuff. And you should create these committees, and the committee should go off and do stuff. Well, that's not how the board has run in the past. It's not how we ran it. I have no clue what the current board's doing. But these committees could potentially get paid. But if you're doing board like stuff, you shouldn't get paid. If you do non-board like stuff, like I said, if I was working on the website or we had people, we need social media. We're running social media. We're paying somebody in social media. We could have paid a board member. I mean, we couldn't afford it, but we could have. You need to go track down sponsors. And one of the things Aaron has said multiple times, and there's one area we agree with, is you should have a huge staff. Well, not a huge staff, but you should have a staff, and you pay the staff. And this is one of the things I talk about with Lisanne, and if you have a physical presence there, if we actually had a physical presence, and you could pay people to chase down sponsors and run the social media and do all this stuff, that's great. That's not board stuff, but that's what the board does because it has to get done. So I think he's right in that regard, but he's not the first person to consider it. And it's just a matter of we need money, and we need people.
Yeah, a lot of it is like we need more money to get more people,
right?
But we need to get more money first.
But it was basically only the board, for the most part. Barry, for years, he ran the website. Basically, it was the board and one or two other people stepped up and ran the organization. And that's the problem. Is like so what the board member duties are kind of got all mixed up with other duties that need to happen to run the organization.
So would you say a little bit of it is like not enough people to be able to do?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely not enough people.
And I mean, it's a hard job to begin with. Like 7 people to run an international downhill skateboarding.
Right. But I mean, just as an example, I mean, this is it's a race or an event. It's not an organization. But at Maryhill, pretty easy race to put on. I think he had 70 people in the crew.
Oh, yeah.
70 people to run this event.
Let me say something. I want to defend that it is not easy to throw an event, but Dino has a long time of running that event, and he has some really cool opportunities to make that event easier to throw. He's able to keep hay bale near the hills.
Absolutely.
So like he's got it a little bit easier than some other people, and he still has like a staff of 70 people, and he has a staff manager as well, and then he has a assistant staff manager also.
This is the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
Like I said, Maryhill is a fairly easy event to put on, and now I don't want to offend anybody here. I hope nobody's taking offense at what I'm saying. It still takes 70 people, and it runs well. It was one of the best events I've been to this last Maryhill.
It was great.
It was amazing. Runs well. We had good drivers.
I think this was my favorite one so far for a couple reasons. One, I think that they had the additional staff made things a lot easier. They had a full schedule for volunteers. You knew what you were doing. I had volunteers coming in weeks before the event and being like, oh yeah, I know what corner I'm going to be on Saturday and Sunday. I'm like, holy shit. Like,
That's awesome.
I don't even know if I'm coming to work tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? Like, these guys have got it down.
But so that's for one event. Now you can imagine what an international organization kind of needs.
And that event's been done multiple times, a year for a long time. And so an international event, you're probably going to need more or at least the same. You need at least the same to run an international event. And that's probably really hard to come by. Right.
And running the organization, you need a ton of people. And, the thing we were one of the things I was trying to do at the end when I was trying to hire authors to write articles so we can get more content. And it was hard. It was hard just to get that. And of course, everybody wants to get paid and we have no money. And so when you have no money, it's hard to do a lot of this stuff. But, we were trying.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, yeah, like I said, trying is the hardest. It's so much harder to do something than it is to do nothing. So we've touched on a lot of stuff. It sounds like I'm going to have to come over to your house and set this all up again. We can have like a 9-hour podcast.
Whatever you want.
I'm down. There's one last thing that I wanted to get to was you'd mentioned a broadcasting deal. That I had heard from somebody else that there was a broadcasting deal that was getting set up from the previous board and it didn't continue with the current board. Do you know what that broadcasting deal was?
Yeah. So I'm going to start off with just to say COVID. Things would be completely different if COVID didn't happen.
We'd probably be having a very different conversation.
Correct. So we started off with, we got approached actually by several people, but this is one of the first guys who approached us as a broadcaster.
Small subjects. When you did the Maryhill Windwalk, you guys collected a ton of footage, more footage than I think I've seen most people collect from an event. Did you guys, you still had access to that? And so you guys, I believe when I had talked to Darius at one point, that he was like, yeah, we're trying to use this reel to do some stuff with it as well. Did that reel end up helping you guys secure down this broadcast?
No, but we did give some of the footage. So let's back up on that.
Yeah.
Because actually leads into this. So one of the things that we did with Windwalk, one of the things I wanted to do is one of my goals, again, bring Rio back. And in order to do that, we need sponsors. And this is the thing, is our industry, I don't want to say it's dying, but we can't, it's almost impossible to run a race on rider money. And that's what we've been doing for 20 years. The cost has been going up. Maryhill this year, it was a free ride. We had 350 riders. I paid $240, I believe, $80 a day.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm willing to bet that he broke even. I mean, maybe he took home $1,000, but I'm willing to bet he broke even. 350 people, $240, and
do the math.
It's insane.
Oh, I had an opportunity to sit down with Dino one time, and like he went over all the costs and just like some of this shit that he said. You're like, dude, you spent that much money on water? Like, it's expensive.
Well, and then on top of that, like what we ended up doing was we rented a U-Haul and we drove to Yakima, which is like an hour away, and got pallets of water from Costco. Now, fortunately, I didn't have to drive, but driving water is interesting physics problem because water sloshes.
Yeah, and it moves.
We had a truck full of water basically, and we needed it. It was 100 and something odd degrees out when we were there. We went through almost all the water, and that's the problem. It's out in the middle of nowhere. There's issues. But yes, it's expensive. And Dino was able to save some money because you mentioned he has hay near the hill. He uses it multiple times a year. And that's one way he's able to save some money.
And that's good. We're happy that Dino's able to do that so he can keep throwing the events. And he should be entitled to making a little bit of money because he puts in more work.
Absolutely. I want every organizer to make 10 grand. Look, here, let me step back another step. And a wedding organizer, the claim is you put on 3 or 4 weddings a year, big weddings. Mm-hmm. And as a wedding organizer, this is all you do. You spend 8 hours a day putting on 4 weddings a year, and you're going to make 100 grand or 50 grand or whatever. So you make like 10 grand a wedding or 20 grand a wedding. I don't know. So putting on a wedding is probably easier than putting on an event.
You don't typically have to have an ambulance on site for a wedding.
Exactly. Now, maybe some of these bigger weddings with 2,000 people, but the point is this is what some event organizers do for a living. And guess what? They do it again the next year. And they do it the year after that. That's why I want them to make money. I didn't do Maryhill the second year because I lost money the first year. So I want the organizer to make money.
So that they throw more events, so there's more closed roads that you can show up.
Exactly.
It's selfish.
Exactly.
I'm right there with you. Like, I'm like, yeah, they need to make money so that they feel inclined to do this again.
And so like, you know, when I come out and say that Dino only made like $1,000, look, the amount of work he put into it, he makes like 10 cents an hour on that $1,000, right? And so, I mean, when I did Windwalk, I spent about a year and was doing between 20 and 40 hours a week to get it set up. And so yeah, I love him. I love for these guys to make $40,000-$50,000 at a race, but you know, typically they're losing $5,000 or $10,000, and a lot of organizers don't mind. Like, I wouldn't mind if I put an event on. I could spend several $1,000s as a racer. I don't mind losing several $1,000s, right? Because it's the same. I can put the event on, or I can race it, right? The cost to me is. But if you look at it as far as like how much work I put into it, it's definitely not a living wage.
No.
So I want them to make money. The more money they make, the more likely they're going to do it again. But on top of that, the more money they make, the better it'll be the next year.
Yeah, because exactly.
So anyways, to get back to what we were saying, just, you don't even know what we're talking
Broadcasting
about.
deal.
Broadcast. So,
And I had asked about the footage that you guys had collected with the
so
Windwalk.
what we did with Windwalk, we did two things. We got a half-hour show out of it, and we actually got that broadcast around the world.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it was a 26-minute show, and it was pretty good. And then what we did was we took, in 10 or 15-minute segments, we showed 15 episodes that we put up on Facebook. We probably didn't advertise as well as we could have, but I got a few things out of Reddit out of it. And what happened, though, is we actually went to a broadcast, I want to say company. We went to a broadcasters convention, and everyone loved it. But nobody wants a one-off event. Nobody wants a one-off video. And that was another mistake we made. Everybody wants a series. They want 8, 10, 15, 20 hours of video. They don't want one.
Kyle, we've both filmed for a long time. How long would it take you to make 20 hours worth of good video?
Well, yeah. But they don't want, like, we couldn't take our event and spread it over 20 hours, right?
No.
We could have, because we have 20 hours on the hill, right? But that's not what they want. They want
one episode. They want a 2-hour series. They want 10 episodes. They want 10 events, and they want 1 hour at each event.
Right. Or maybe 5 events and two episodes per event. Maybe we can do a stand-up on one day and street loose the next day in the episode. But that's what everybody wanted. So you need a series. So what happened was we had this guy saw us. I don't know where he saw it. He goes, "This is awesome." He goes, "I love this." And he contacted us back at the beginning of it was almost 2 years ago now. And so we worked with him, and we had a deal kind of ironed out, and then COVID hit. And what was horrible about this was on Monday he had a meeting set up with a sponsor who was planning on doing like a $5 million deal with a huge event. And because this particular person has other sports, and he was going to try to package it all together, that was Monday. Wednesday, basically the world shut down. And so what we did was we turned around into we took our time. We spent all year kind of ironing out some of the details. And look, at the end of the year, the numbers that IDF would have gotten isn't probably the best. And this is one of the reasons why GGA didn't like it. But it was better than anything we've had in the past. And it was a 5-year contract. And the reason it was a 5-year contract is you assume that it takes 3 years to break even. Right. Oh. So he's going to catch on.
He's going to lose money for 3 years.
His plan was the first year he was going to foot the bill. $250,000, or I don't know what the number was. He was going to foot the bill and then hopefully use that to get some money for the second year. Well, the money for the second year.
This is a broadcasting deal, so you have to spend the money first and then turn it into a show, and then you get to make money off of it.
And you're looking at today, Brewer actually said $45,000. Look, it's going to cost you bare minimum to film at an event like a downhill event, you're looking at $50,000 for a cheap event. You're talking about more like 100,000 plus for a much more professional event. That's with filmographers and editors and all these people. It takes a lot of people. You need good equipment, and it's expensive. And if you want to do multiple of them, you're looking at $250,000 to $500,000.
Mm-hmm.
Well, remember back to when we talked about we had 45,000 in the bank. That's not even enough to get one race filmed.
And that's the federation. That's not even one event.
Right.
That is the international federation.
And the events they run the same way. They're break even, or like we just talked about, they're losing money at every event. So we have this guy that came in and said, "Look, I'm gonna foot the bill." And again, it's a 5-year thing. So he's hoping in 3 years he'll start breaking even, and in year 4 and 5 he'll make money. So that's why it's 5 years and not like 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of 5 years, we can renegotiate the contract. And the money was pretty good. We were looking at paying out 20 riders to get them, because you want the same people at a lot of the events. So we were
you want the story. You want, man, this person did poorly in the first 2 events, but they've really been coming on strong. And then we've got this super awesome finale.
So they were going to pay, I don't remember the exact number. It was either $500 or $1,000 per event for 20 people. He was going to pay prize money. He was going to pay sanctioning fee to IDF. And then he was going to film it. And a lot of people, we talked about this in the past, and a lot of people are like, look, your film rights are one of the few things you have as like an event organizer. But the reality is your film rights don't amount to anything if you don't film it. And if you can't film it in a series, again, it doesn't amount to anything, because that's what happened to us with Windwalk.
You're like, everyone loved it, but they're like, hey, this is this is great, but we need 10 of them.
Right. And like we talked to one person, and they're like, yeah, we might be able to buy it for like $1,000 and sell it to the airport, not the airports, the airplane. So when you get on an airplane and you watch some video on there, we could have gotten on there. We made like $1,000 off it. I'm like, okay, great. We need another 50,000 to
do this again.
Right. To do this again. So anyways, that was what this broadcaster was going to do. It was a pretty good deal. He had some good plans to like betting and maybe
betting. You mean like huge. Gambling?
Yes, more like
I'm in. Give me the guy's number. I'll broker the deal right now.
He was more fantasy sports than just trivial betting. But fantasy sports are huge right now.
Yeah,
they say baseball and they say football.
Yeah.
But he threw all this stuff in there, and he's like, who's always gonna make money? Video games, all this stuff. And
once again, you got to use all of your channels to try and you never know. It's like, oh wait, this may not take off, but people may start betting on it like crazy, and so it sticks around.
Exactly. So we had this great, and like I said, at the end of the day, the numbers for us wasn't the best I think it could have been, but given the fact that we were starting from nowhere, I thought it was great. That was why we agreed to sign the deal. But it took us all year, because we were in a hurry because of COVID. It took us all year to like iron out the specifics. And it was like December timeframe, we were ready to sign it. But they were like, look, let's wait for the new board to come on. Again, for the same reasons.
With the bank account. Last thing you want to do is sign a document, and then like 2 weeks from there, we're like, hey, you got to sign it again.
And basically, my understanding, and this is what Brewer kind of said today in the meeting, was Brewer looked at it and said, look, we have professional photographers in the skating industry, I guess. And we think because we have to give up some of our profit to this guy, we think we can do it all ourselves. And he keeps talking about homegrown talent. And I'm like, this is all great and fine and dandy, but you still need that $100,000 or $50,000 to do this.
Yeah, we need some homegrown trust funds right now to help get this thing jumped off the ground.
So what ended up happening is they basically said no to the broadcaster.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we are today.
Well, I mean, having not been in the room with the information that you've just given me, I mean, sometimes it's like, I don't know what the right answer is, but I would say it'd be really cool if there was a broadcasting deal and 20 people were getting flown around right now to go to events, or maybe not right now, but in a year.
Yeah. So one of the things that happened that Brewer didn't like was he was like, 20 people are going to win from this and no one else is going to. And it's like, yes, it's true. In the first couple of years, the only people are going to make any money is you have the prize money and these 20 people.
And the people, Those are the people who have been losing money for the last 4 years.
Right. But at the same time, what's going to end up happening is, or the hope anyways, the hope is, it'll be on TV. I can go tell my mom, hey, go turn on channel
check
whatever.
it out. I'm going to be on channel 5.
Right.
Yeah.
Or we're going to live stream it. In fact, I just watched one of the things this last weekend that this broadcaster live streamed. And, he's either live stream it or we're going to get it on broadcast TV or both. But then the next year we get Coca-Cola or AT&T or Nike to give us $5 million to put this on. Now all of a sudden we have this race with $1 million. Well, remember when I talked about Red Bull DHX? The claim was that Red Bull spent $250,000 20 years ago in Cape Town, which is like $2.5 million. We had couches, we had food, we had free food for lunch. They drove us around everywhere. We had these starting gates, we had these awesome bibs. It was an event. It was a world-class event.
It's kind of sexy.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm wearing, like, it's nice. I don't know if you've ever felt this way. Well, you probably have. When I go to an event, I'm like, oh crap, I'm the dirty skater in this town. There's only been a couple towns that I've gone to where you're like, this is amazing, where I feel like people are super stoked. One of them was Kath Lammett, but that's a totally different thing. They're just like, holy cow, you came here and spent money. Thank you so much. It's not like, oh my God, that's so-and-so.
Let's hear my story about Cape Town. So this was 2001. Mm-hmm. And up until this point, people had no clue what street luge was. It was in the X Games for a few years, but people didn't know what it was. And I nowadays I carry my board in a bag because it's easier, but back then I didn't have it in a bag. And I would carry this thing around. People were like, what is this thing? It's this weird contraption, and always had to explain to people what it was. Well, I started going to Cape Town in 2001. I just started using a snowboard bag because it's about the same size for a street luge. So here it is, middle of summer, that I'm flying into Cape Town with a snowboard bag. And I'm walking up through customs, and there's like this stainless steel table, and there's like this lady putting those rubber gloves on, like, bend over, and she's like, what's this thing? And I'm like, I'm gonna have to explain to her what this is.
Yeah.
And I said, it's a street luge. And she goes, oh, you mean like blah 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 blah. She knew exactly what it was. There was this big mural in town. Everybody in town knew what it was. And I was like, yeah, that's it. Like, I didn't have to even say anything.
You get street luge, and then you got ready to like pull it out and like
Right.
show her what. And that amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so that's got to feel pretty good.
Absolutely. And there's other times when same thing. I go up to the customs and like, oh yeah, you guys are doing that, and blah blah. Yeah, it's awesome. I love it. And we need more of that.
We need more of that. Well, we're going to keep talking both on this podcast and off this podcast. Because we've just done 2.5 hours right now.
Sorry.
No. This is perfect. I'm so glad that you came on. Normally I have my friends come on and we talk about crashing each other out. And so for you, it was nice to have a conversation about like real things that apply to more than just me and my friends taking each other out.
I can tell you some stories about crashing, but yeah, anytime. I had a pleasure.
That was amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. And yeah, this is definitely not going to be the last time. So
Awesome.
Thank you for taking the time, Chris. Is there anything that you want to tell people about? Like, how do they find you? Are you like, check me out on Instagram, do this?
So I have a website, which I kind of fixed up last year, chrismcb.com. I haven't actually touched it in a while. I used to write stories about my racing, and then I started filming a lot more. And so I have a YouTube channel, which I don't know where it is now. I'll probably have to add a link to chrismcb.com. But you can probably find me on Facebook under Chris McBride. And yeah, I don't know what else to say there.
Well,
And I've got some other things in the fire. We'll see what happens over the next few years. So I'm not going away yet.
I got a can full of gas in the back, so you just let me know where to pour it, and I'll be more than happy.
Awesome.
Dude, thank you so much. Kyle, as always, you're the best.
Yeah, thank you.
Skate safe, wear your helmets, and please support your local event organizer.
Absolutely.